very little fun.
Wexford lead 2-13 to 2-8.
Honest, I thought it was just great to get an Irish shirt.
OTB Gold, the very best of Off the Ball. Weekdays from 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
All right, a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Tuesday morning to OTB AM. We're here with you every morning from 7:30 until 9:30. Great show lined up for you today. Brian O'Driscoll and Alan Quinlan are going to give us their thoughts on the rugby. Stephen Kelly's going to join us in studio a little bit later on to talk about all the weekend's football stories. Owen is here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you getting on?
Have we been on air together since the skit went viral?
No, but Adrian and I have been on, and he kind of took the piss out of me suitably.
How did
because
your friends...
that's what you need to do after something like that happens, is you need to take the piss out of somebody because that already hasn't been done.
Yeah, how did your friends deal with it? That's the most important part.
Pretty well, yeah.
Yeah?
That wasn't that bad.
Have they stitched it in? Has your nickname changed? Is there anything?
Not really, no.
Any other information that...
I have a separate life, you know. I've got more to my character than my profession, Ger.
I know, but ultimately, they're going to be the ones who decide how this survives, ultimately.
Potentially, yeah. You're making it even funnier this morning. I'm sure Richard is at home rubbing his hands saying, thank you, Ger, for making the joke even funnier.
Oh, but it was classic. It was good.
It was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant.
So somebody in the office was like, couldn't get it to work on their computer. And so I was there the moment they started watching and the moment that your bit came on. And it was the first time I'd seen uproarious laughter of its type. Not at a comedy gig.
It's a very happy office out there, isn't it?
It was an exceedingly happy office because it was good. Did you recognise yourself?
Of course I recognise him. Well, I met Rich Starr before it went out. I've said all this stuff last Friday, but I met Rich Starr before it went out, and he was like, "I'm sorry in advance for this," but he absolutely nailed it. He was absolutely phenomenal. I texted him afterwards and said, "Bravo!
I love you.
Bravo! Absolutely, sensational.
Very good. You want to draw a discreet veil over it now. Stop talking about this. I've done this bit. It's over. That's what those eyes are saying.
Not really, no. Do you want to, what else is there, to it?
Yeah, okay.
Like, congratulations to yourself on getting a second impression. Is that what you wanted me to say?
No, I mean, but yours was the pièce de résistance. That was the...
Yeah, it probably was. Oh, no, it's a badge of honour, and I thought it was absolutely phenomenal.
Cool. All right, where are we going this weekend? After last weekend, where do you want to start?
God, like the amount of things that we could possibly parse through when it comes to last weekend, from Saturday morning and Sunday morning. There was an intrigue to Sunday morning. A World Cup that hasn't given us too many slogs. It's given us a lot of trashings and a lot of fancy rugby at times here and there. We got smashed by an irresistible All Blacks, for example. But it was refreshing to see Wales and South Africa beat lumps out of one another for 80 full minutes. That was kind of one of my highlights of the weekend. You had a brilliant Sunday of football, as we would have heard on the radio all day, from Liverpool to another Arsenal captain walking off. You have the fallout then of the Rugby World Cup coming a couple of hours later with Eddie Jones versus Warren Gatland, and then you've got Tiger winning on Sunday night, and then the Irish hockey team getting screwed over. It turned out to be one of these unique bank holiday weekends.
We're going to talk to one of the members of the Irish hockey team a little bit later on as well to get their take from inside the camp on what exactly happened. It doesn't seem as if there's any avenue left for them really to appeal at this point. They issued a one-line statement yesterday saying you can't appeal a result, so we're moving on.
Yeah, like I'm not sure, did you see Johnny Waterson's piece in the Irish Times this morning, but he's kind of gone through the potential avenues that they do have, that ultimately there's one clause in the rule book that says that a video ref can't make a decision.
Yeah.
And it's up to the umpire on the field to make the decision, that you get advice from the video ref. But it seems that in this case that the video ref has made the decision for the on-field umpire. And he says that if Irish Rugby managed to fly over a lawyer to hear Bundy Aki's case and to try and actually push that forward, then surely Irish hockey should be able to do something, especially when the stakes are so high, when an Olympic qualification place was up for grabs.
Yeah, the line that stuck out to me, though, was the sport of hockey in Ireland is festooned with solicitors, barristers and judges. It would not be costly to pore over regulations to see if they were strictly adhered to. I mean, you've got everybody on your side, and then you're like, oh, hang on a second, we're the richest sport in the world. We can get all this stuff for nothing. There's the piece there if you want to pick out the specific. You just picked out the specific. I don't know. I read that piece and it seems to me like the deal, it's done now, and was it definitely not a penalty?
Well, I don't think that's what Waterson is saying. I think getting into the nitty-gritty of whether or not it was a penalty, that's not a case you can stand over whatsoever.
Well, then either it was right or wrong. And then also they lost the penalty shootout, so
yeah,
it's not like they didn't have an opportunity to win after that.
That is true, but the point he's making, just to repeat, is that the final decision, including any matter of interpretation, remains with the match umpires and not the video umpire.
Yeah.
So he quotes the people involved, and he says, they're asking for a body tackle in the D before the whistle is gone. Have a look, please, if there is a tackle, and when the whistle was blown. That's what the umpire asked. And then the video referee replied saying, yes, that's Ireland's infraction of the 29 of Ireland, so that's a penalty stroke. That's what the referral umpire said.
Yeah, but I'm asking you the question, right? They're asking for a body tackle. And I know that if it is a body tackle, it's a penalty. So therefore, I don't need to be told it's a penalty because I know it's a penalty. Yeah, it was a body tackle, so that's a penalty.
Yeah, if he just shuts up a bit earlier, there is no leg to stand on here.
But I don't think there's a leg to stand on anyway. And I actually think that, look, Team 33, right? How do we end up coming across in that whole thing in retrospect?
But to be fair, Hockey Ireland is saying that there was no appeal last night as teams cannot appeal umpire decisions, and it doesn't actually seem that they might take this further. It's hard to see any sort of quotes from anybody who's actually looking to take this any further. I don't think there is going to be a Team 33 sort of effort from Hockey Ireland here. I'm not sure whether or not this would actually allow them to take a case, or how far a case could go, or what the actual end product of the case might be. So it does seem like straw clutching here of the highest order for sure, but on this particular thing, but they can still feel fairly aggrieved by it all, I'd imagine, and it's obviously tough to take at this juncture.
When you're so close to qualifying for the Olympics after such a long qualifying period, and for the ball to be trickling out of play, and for once it goes out of play you win, only for that to be the play that it gets called back, that's heartbreak.
It really is, and this Irish hockey has had moments of heartbreak in the past in both men's and women's. There was obviously a breakthrough last year in the women's hockey. This was obviously a very, very close call to the men's team getting back to the Olympics once again. And for a lot of people, it's going to be the end of their careers. It's going to be the end of their international careers, their last opportunity to play in an Olympic Games. And perhaps that does colour your view in terms of what we actually see here and how important this decision is.
We've got a multicultural support on our YouTube channel. Generally people from all around the world watching, depending on what different types of sport it is, but the English people who are YouTube subscribers over on offtheball.com, youtube.com/offtheball, very upset with us over the last 24 hours because we just didn't do enough about England's amazing victory against the All Blacks.
I got a few tweets. Did you get a few tweets?
I didn't. No, we weren't on air yesterday because it was bank holiday here in Ireland. Eddie on YouTube. The channel's gone extremely quiet with regards to rugby. I wonder why that is. Black and White Till I Die is actually a Newcastle fan. I was wondering the same. I really didn't think they would be such sore losers that they wouldn't actually report on the Rugby World Cup semi-finals at all. It's actually laughable. Can't believe they call this a sports news radio show. Should hang their heads in shame. T-H-E-R-E. Joke comes to mind. Amateur jokes. A-M-A-T-U-R-E. Amateur. Amateur jokes. Anyone know what's happening to Off the Ball today? Asks Jay Shrimpton. Never mind today. What about Saturday and Sound? Sunday, I presume that is. Never mind the Monday morning Sports AM show. Laughable and pathetic. They are all in a huge huff about England being the Rugby World Cup final. Surely they wouldn't just do a channel-wide blanket ban on anything Rugby World Cup related, though. It's a friggin' sports radio channel. What on earth is going on? It's called a bank holiday. That is all that was going on, and we're more than happy to... who are you up for in the final?
South Africa.
Are you?
I didn't realise how much they didn't want England to win the World Cup until Saturday morning.
Really?
I was like, I can't believe this is happening. I cannot believe this is happening.
Hugh Masson says, how many England players get in Ireland's team now? Buddy, more than one. How many Ireland players get in the England team
When the laughing emoji tilts to the side, it makes the tweet even funnier.
Well, I mean, that is pretty funny, though.
It was Brian O'Driscoll who did the...
You're carrying the can.
I was the let's get used to being superior line guy.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I'd like to think that...
Have those memes all died, or are they going to make a comeback now?
Thankfully, they were largely used up and they absolutely pulverised us in the first game of the Six Nations. They made a little bit of a resurgence.
I'm sure we could dig some of them out over the course of the show today.
We can. They were kind of reused a little bit when we had our record defeat at Twickenham. Which, again, not an ideal year for that to happen.
The memes, Tommy, the memes. What was the line?
Get used to being superior.
Get used to being superior. Oh, and Tommy got distracted. He wasn't... he was fixing the coming up there, which is coming next.
To be fair, I was vindicated. We did become world number one after that moment, so...
I believe they call that a Pyrrhic victory.
I can't believe England are actually world number one for the first time since like 2004.
Is it? That's been so long?
It's a long old time. So maybe we should have soaked in being top of the pile for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that whole week and a half or whatever it was. South Africa, you want South Africa to win the World Cup? Really?
It really is a very, very tough call. I know you would have placed Wales on top of the pile of people you would not like to see the World Cup. I'm not sure where Wales get above
South Africa right
England.
there. South Africa holding Wales on their shoulders, I would say.
England, South Africa for me is a nightmare final. The nightmare final. There is little to like. To be fair, actually, as time's gone by, this England team's getting a little bit more likeable.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to admire the performance on Saturday morning.
An issue.
The one thing that kind of maybe makes things a little bit sour on Saturday morning is not just because it's England and, you know, they tend to rub your faces in it a little bit. They smashed us this year. They brought us back down to earth. But I think their performance against New Zealand as well was a fairly rude awakening for Irish people as well. Like, you look at some individual performances, you look at the kamikaze kids in the back row, and like we've got Brian O'Driscoll on the show this morning, he's in the newspapers today talking about how we need to improve our skill set. But if you look at the performances of the people in the back row from England at the weekend, you look at Curry and Underhill, you go back 12 months previously, even if you go back to peak 2019 form, how much better are they than the likes of Peter O'Mahony and Josh van der Flier? Okay, they're skilled rugby players, but there's a bit more to them than just, you know, grassroots conversations about free-flowing rugby and all that.
Yeah.
Like, at the breakdown, that is where Ireland had prided themselves on. That is where they were the world beaters. And that is where they'd lost their way, it seems, this year, because the exact same opposition was up against a far more ferocious outfit in the space of a week, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, they kind of killed us. All right, let's tell you what exactly coming up here. So Brian just go around about 8:05 there. Sports pages until then. Alan Quinlan around about the same time. You can tweet us with the hashtag OTBAM. The hockey heartache coming your way 8:20 this morning, and then football with Stephen Kelly around about 8:30. We'll talk about Granit Xhaka. We'll talk about Liverpool's comeback against Spurs and everything else. We'll talk about the rebirth of Manchester United now that Martial and Rashford are playing together again, and how great they are, and how, you know, maybe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the Messiah to lead them to the promised land. You can give us all your thoughts on that as you want across the rest of the morning using the hashtag OTBAM. Time for the papers. Going to start this morning with the back page of The Sun. Unai of the Storm, Arsenal in crisis. Emery feeling heat from board. He fears revolt if Xhaka acts as captain. What do you think of this? You're an Arsenal fan?
I think part of me feels a little bit sorry for Granit Xhaka. I think it was a poor appointment in the first place, and I think as soon as he was appointed Arsenal captain, a moment like what we saw on Sunday was always going to happen, and part of me does feel sorry for him. Then again, it's not exactly very captain of a player to go off, cupping his ears, taking his jersey off, walking straight down the tunnel. You probably do need to carry yourself in a bit of a better way than that. It's kind of fitting, though. It is kind of the traditional thing of an Arsenal captain, perhaps finding a lack of glory in many places. The Arsenal fans have never liked Granit Xhaka. He's always been hard to love for a number of reasons, but I think really because he's kind of summed up a department of the team that hasn't been firing at all over the last few seasons. Kind of a weak enough midfield, a player who's prone to mistakes, a player who's fiery, which would lend itself to being a good captain, but ultimately a player who's, I keep using that word, who's erratic, and that can allow things to creep into his game. And
captaincy in football is irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. It makes no odds. Keane and Vieira were both kicking lumps out of each other and getting sent off when they were the captains, and that wasn't like, oh, what a captain, he's getting sent off. Like, it's just you go up for the toss, and that's it. You are valued to your team by the quality of play that you bring, consistency over the course of a season.
But he gets booed at the weekend because he's captain.
He gets booed because he's getting taken off. And if he's getting,
I like the fact that he's captain.
If he's getting booed because he's captain, then the fans are dumb.
Well,
it doesn't matter that he's captain.
It's a lightning rod. It's a lightning rod for sure. They
don't single him out because he's captain.
I think that the reception is way more poisonous for him because he is captain.
But then the fans are stupid.
This was a story. This was a big story over the last couple of weeks that Granit Xhaka was going to become Arsenal captain.
And then he becomes captain. Or who's he replacing?
So Mertesacker a couple of seasons ago, then he goes in. Will we go through the previous captains?
Do you want to do this piece?
Let's do this piece, because Like, Granit Xhaka is at the end of a long old line, Ger. It's kind of a line that tires me out when it comes to talking about Arsenal captains. And you talk about people who've had the armband. You go back to Thierry Henry, who was, in my opinion, probably the last captain who was free of any sort of bad legacy when it comes to Arsenal. So after Thierry Henry, you had a good couple of options when it came to Arsenal captain. Gilberto Silva actually looked to be the front runner, but no, they didn't pick Gilberto Silva. They went for William Gallas, who of course we all remember as that strop in Birmingham. And then a couple of years later, a couple of months later actually, let's rip it, teammates for lacking courage. Says Arsenal are not brave enough in battle. Insults from unnamed player have caused unrest. William Gallas there launching an astonishing attack on his young teammates, claiming they are not brave enough in battle, and revealing he has been forced to step in to prevent players arguing during games. He was stripped of captaincy after that. Cesc Fabregas was next man up. That's where his career finished, not at Arsenal. Next man up, Robin van Persie. Where did his career finish? Oh yeah, there he is, scoring against Arsenal after he leaves as captain. After van Persie leaves, Thomas Vermaelen comes in as Arsenal captain. For me, this was a very, very good decision. But his career ended up as an unused sub in an FA Cup semi-final, like as if the armband itself actually takes away all the talent from within you, kind of like Michael Jordan and his colleagues in Space Jam. That is what the Arsenal captaincy tends to do to Arsenal players. And it was the same with Mikel Arteta, only played 16 times for Arsenal after he became Arsenal captain. That is the peak right there. Manchester City in his coaching career is the peak of his career after he became Arsenal captain. After that then, you had Per Mertesacker, who was, for me, the last good Arsenal choice as a captain at that point. Barely played when he was captain, but they did keep him as a coach at least. And then to answer your question, who was captain before Granit Xhaka? Well, it was this guy. That is Granit Xhaka. Let's have a look. And that is how Lauren Koscielny's career as Arsenal captain ended. It's cursed. It's an absolute curse. And that is why I think when they were considering who will become next Arsenal captain, they were like, let's pick somebody that we can do without. Let's just give it to Granit Xhaka. We don't care if he gets booed off. The armband is going to destroy this guy's career, and we can't afford to allow it to destroy the careers of any of our talented attackers.
Did they deserve to take him off the weekend? Did he deserve to come off at 2-2 with an hour gone? Was he like definitely the player that they needed to sub off?
Not necessarily, but it was probably required at that moment in terms of trying to go and hunt out a final goal, which, to be fair, they did get. And Arsenal will be sitting here this morning, like, I hate complaining about refereeing decisions, but the VAR decision against Socrates was an absolute and utter catastrophe. And it was a joke of a call. No point getting into it. Really, another 2-2 draw is exactly where Arsenal are probably at the moment. But they should be sitting there in the aftermath thinking to themselves, well, that was a bad thing that happened in the game, but at least they ended up winning. But it ended up being captain gets taken off, cups his ear to the crowd, gets booed off, and they also had a perfectly good goal ruled out. It was the refusal to shake hands with the manager and storming off down the tunnel that adds a bit of impact to the bit where he's like telling the crowd to F off. Yeah, and so something is definitely going to give way here over the next couple of months. It could be Unai Emery himself, or not. Or this is an opportunity for them all to go and sit around and go, okay, well, how do we get to the situation where you're coming off, you're not playing well? If we all agree that the captaincy is important, which I don't think they should, but anyway, this needs to be a trigger point for them to go, let's either decide to fix this collectively, or let's all decide we're all getting fired. You're going to leave, I'm going to get fired, and they'll pay me up, so I don't really mind. Just bring in all the different stakeholders, bring in Arsenal Fan TV to spread positive messages about this guy. Yeah. Stop the booing, stop the jeering, and everybody can be happy with their lives again. That's exactly how you do it. Go for the top 4 trophy again. Stick it live on YouTube. What have you got for us? We've got the Irish Independent here. Brian O'Driscoll's quote leading the way. Schmidt in Ireland ran out of ideas. McCarthy said to recall fit again. Brady is the news on the Ireland camp of the squad set to be named for the Denmark game. And one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. That is the sounds out of the Irish hockey camp. And then there's also a picture there of Chris Hughton, 40 years to the day since he made his Ireland debut. He's got an exclusive interview in the Irish Independent. Nice jersey that Chris Hughton was wearing in that one as well. So here's the back page of the Herald this morning. In from the cold, Brady will get a chance to prove himself. And then breaking the mould, 40 years since Chris Hughton's Irish debut. It's obviously the same interview that they've done there. There's also a front page story which pertains to the marathon. Hero Garda saves life of marathon runner.
Garda is being hailed a hero for saving a man's life after he collapsed during the Dublin Marathon. Detective Garda Niamh Connaughton was on duty near Chapel Island Sunday when the runner collapsed in front of her with a suspected heart attack. Thanks to her, some children or grandchildren might still have their dad or granddad around, said a fellow detective. So, well done to Detective Garda Niamh Connaughton.
The Irish Times leads with their build-up to the Rugby World Cup final. Springboks' first black captain, Khaleesi, on the brink of monumental achievement. It's Jerry Thornley's piece here talking about Khaleesi, who was watching the 2007 final from a tavern in his wide township. He was offered his first contract at Western Province at the age of 18 by Rassie Erasmus. And then, of course, Erasmus ends up making him the first black captain of the Springboks in their 126-year history. So, got a bit of history there. Like, if you dig too deep into how progressive this current South African team is, you might end up with a few unpleasant answers.
Yeah.
But on the face of it, it's obviously a
the
great
ongoing
story.
case.
The Khaleesi story is a good story. I don't think there's any question
The
about
ongoing
that.
case around Even Estebet still hasn't been cleared up just yet. Exactly what happened on the night. The allegations are that, which he's obviously denied, but there's an ongoing court case, isn't that right?
It certainly didn't reach its conclusion. I don't want to say that it's ongoing, or was it just pushed aside, or what happened there?
Yeah. There's an allegation that he beat up 3 men outside, I think it's outside a bar, or certainly outside a premises anyway, and that there was a racial motivation involved in it. He's completely denied that, of course, and they say that the case is being taken to extract some money from him. So the Daily Mirror, give him a break. Bellerin calls on fans to forgive Xhaka as Gunners stars visit the captain's home to show support. The melodrama around Arsenal is the best part about this.
Without question.
Like,
It's the finest soap opera that's ever existed.
I mean, they're grown men. Get on with it.
I've never had thankfully, I've never had any serious addiction in my life where I've experienced the sensation of relapsing. But I felt it on Sunday night when I was like, Arsenal Fan TV. Sounds pretty good right now. Sounds pretty good. But thankfully I had to go out the door, so I actually didn't get around to it. So,
right. You haven't gone back since.
That was my nicotine patch on Sunday. Just getting out of the house.
Sitting there somewhere, just crawling down your spine, going,
Exactly.
oh, excuse me.
I just wanted a bit of Robbie and Claude and the schadenfreude that comes with it. The melodrama, is putting it lightly. It's a beautiful piece of theatre.
The other one is Randolph still hopeful that he'll be fit for Euro test against Danes. This is despite the fact that the Middlesbrough manager had said that he wouldn't be fit. Darren Randolph is like, oh, look, I'm going to go. I'm going to be fit. I'm keeping my place.
The Racing Post leads with Hutchinson in shock decision to quit saddles. This is Wayne Hutchinson, shocking the jump racing world yesterday as he announced his retirement from the saddle with immediate effect. And on the back page, you've got Cup offers silver lining for Toffees, and Aubameyang is favoured to lead Arsenal. So Mark Langdon saying that Granit Xhaka is 6-4 to lead Arsenal out in their next Premier League match after his bust up with the Emirates faithful. Wolves is at North London on Saturday, and Xhaka is certain to receive a cool reception. So he was chosen to skipper by the players, but Aubameyang is 8-11 to wear the armband against Wolves.
The Times, the London Times, we won't let nation down, vows Jones. Eddie Jones he was having a day. He was having himself an afternoon yesterday in the press conference, rejecting the claim that England had peaked too soon, and said they're aiming to cheer up a country divided over Brexit by beating South Africa in the World Cup final. So Warren Gatland had wondered whether or not England might be able to rescale the heights of their 19-7 victory over New Zealand. Can you send my best wishes to Warren and make sure he enjoys the fourth place playoff? There's no place in world sport more hated and more despised by anybody, but particularly the people who are involved in the sport, than the fourth place playoff. Because you were so close, inches away from being involved in the biggest occasion that the whole sport has to offer. But yet here you are, in a match that no one cares about, that particularly in rugby is just a recipe for injury and despair. There's a smell of want off the fourth place playoff. And rubbing it in, smearing Warren Gatland with your first place juice is what Eddie Jones is doing. It's like, oh, we've got the first place thing. We've got that big game, the one that you've spent your 15 years at Wales trying to get into, but never quite managed, Warren. First time round with England. Look at me, Warren. I'm Eddie Jones. Enjoy.
Is it it seems that it's either a prepared barb or something that's really irked Eddie Jones, because Warren Gatland might have a point. There are very famous cases down through the years of Rugby World Cup semi-final victories that have been so extraordinary that he just could not be matched a week later in the Rugby World Cup final. And Eddie Jones is clearly aware of this. Eddie Jones is a man who led a team to beat the All Blacks in a World Cup and then could not follow that up with a World Cup win. This is part of his psychological view, and I would say a hugely important part of how England are motivated and how England's minds are focused ahead of next weekend. That is the exact thing that he did not want said about this England team, that there has been very famous cases before of teams beating big teams like the All Blacks and then subsequently not winning the World Cup. So he's obviously touched a nerve there, Gatland, and I think he has a point. He is on the back page of The Guardian as well. Eddie Jones enjoyed a third-place playoff. Jones continuing war of words with Wales coach Gatland. And James Milner is the main story there. I hate VAR, and I don't think many footballers feel differently. We're completely exhausted with talking about VAR, right? Is there anything left to be said that hasn't been said about VAR? The one thing that in this interview actually that was kind of rumoured, but James Milner confirms it, is that Jurgen Klopp did wear Cristiano Ronaldo boxer shorts when making his final team talk before Liverpool faced Real Madrid in the 2018 Champions League final. I'd heard that out there. It was kind of an urban myth, and I was like, not a chance. But Milner said it was true.
Was there a reason? What was the psychological?
Just to make them laugh, just to make them, a bit more bubbly, a bit more happy before facing the greatest player in the world at that point.
Okay. Most of the stuff he's done has worked for him, in fairness. Don't give Jacques flack. Bellerin begs fans to forgive Granite's antics and Randolph in race to be fit, as well as double coup in store for the boys. Celtic winger James Forrest has revealed he's set to agree a new contract. And on-loan keeper Fraser Forster admits he couldn't turn down a long-term return to the Scottish champions. The Mail is best of three is the headline at the back of it there. Ireland aces on track to feature against Danes, so there's three of them. Shane Duffy, Darren Randolph and Glenn Whelan will also figure in the squad despite injury fears. And what have you got?
The Daily Telegraph, war of words. England coach kicks off World Cup final week by taunting Wales. Those comments that we brought to you already. And Johnny Wilkinson is saying this lot are quicker, faster and stronger than the 2003 team.
The Examiner this morning is Blue Blood. They have an interview with Bernard Brogan. Kieran Shannon's done a two-page spread, and that's worth digging out today for you if you want to have a look at that. Blame game. Cullen counters claim Leinster playing style worked against Ireland. This is interesting. We're going to pick it up with Brian Driscoll in just a minute. Cullen says narrow focus on Lancaster misses the point. Why does nobody pick up the change of coaches in Munster? Did that have an effect? Or the change of coaches at Connacht? And last one for now is the Irish News. GA2 nicey in deciding winners. McGee. This is Eamon McGee. Definitely a picture of Eamon McGee. I haven't read this piece yet, but I'm looking forward to it. What does he mean? What's too nicey? A draw of the Donegal final this weekend. He feels like there's a replay on Wednesday. He feels that there should be one of the clubs refusing to play winner takes all on the day. So he's like, come on, let's just have the penalty shootout. No extra time, straight to penalties, straight to 45s, and make the keeper start and work forward 1 to 15.
Penalties are way better. We haven't got enough of this in 2019. 2019 was supposed to be the year where the penalties were supposed to explode.
We've had a lot of people stepping in and say, you can't be having penalties.
Remember the hope of the FBD League? Mayo versus Roscommon, wasn't it? Or was it Mayo versus Galway? And a penalty shootout deciding that. That was supposed to be the start of a beautiful year, a beautiful relationship between the Irish people and penalty shootouts. And it just didn't happen.
Somebody whose YouTube name is Damien Moignier Beastie. Is it real, do you think? It could be. Come on, Owen, we'd be supporting you if you were in the final, he says.
Thank you very much, Damien.
Moignier Beastie. Is
it Moignier's middle name or Moignier Beastie, a double barrel?
Double barrel.
Well,
that's
thank you very much.
That's the champagne they serve for breakfast in his prep school.
What country is Damien from?
I presume he's an England fan. Danny B is an Irish fan. England's rugby has been phenomenal. Pace, power, skill. However, Eddie Jones being Eddie Jones is reminding me why I don't like them winning. His comments on Gatland were lame. Right, it is 7:58 this morning. You're watching OTBAM. Up next, we're talking the Rugby World Cup final with Brian Driscoll and Alan Quinlan. Live from Japan. There is football later on this evening. Stephen Kelly's going to join us in studio on Sunday after Liverpool beat Spurs by 2-1. Nathan and David Myler caught up with Jordan Henderson. Here's the Liverpool captain on Man City.
I don't know how aware you are of the stats, but that's now 45 games unbeaten here in the Premier League at Anfield. It's an 11th straight victory. Like, you're rolling on very nicely at home, and Manchester City are coming to town in 2 weeks' time. Does it feel bigger, that game, than any other game so far this season with that 6-point lead? Does it feel, you know what, it's a long way to go, but here's an opportunity for us to really lay down a marker?
Well, I'm not even thinking about that game yet. It's a while away, and we've still got games before that. So not even in a thought in our mind, really. The next game's Arsenal midweek. That's the biggest game for us. And that's been our mentality for a long period of time now, and that's the way it needs to be. the next game is the biggest game. And we'll think about City when that time comes.
It's 8 o'clock this morning. You're very welcome along to OTBAM, the Sports Breakfast radio TV show from Off the Ball. Best place to listen to us is on the Go Loud app, or of course you can stream us live on youtube.com/Off the Ball, or just the Off the Ball website is also the best place for it. Let's head over to Japan and join Brian O'Driscoll. Brian, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, we're pretty good. We should start with England, really, because that is the story of the weekend. They were absolutely phenomenal against the All Blacks. A chastening experience for us to see how far away we were from the All Blacks, and then to see how far away the All Blacks were from England. A dominant performance from start to finish from England. One of the best performances I've ever seen from an England team. Is it that good?
I think one of the best performances I've ever seen, full stop. Certainly one of the best performances I've ever seen against the All Blacks. I thought we were exceptional against them in November, and we had all the answers to everything they threw at us. And I think that was maybe an All Black team at the end of their season, a little bit tired, needed a little bit of reinvention. This was an All Black team, absolutely buzzing at the height of their powers, coming off the back of hugely confident performance against us the week before. And I just thought England were outstanding. Their defensive strategy and understanding how to shut down the All Black game plan was brilliant. Their one-on-one tackling, phenomenal. Their tactical kicking from George Ford was brilliant. Some of the heroics from Owen Farrell running around for half a game on one leg was real leadership. So I thought it was an exceptional performance, and if they go and get to 85 or 90% of that again, I think that they'll be the ones to lift the trophy at the weekend.
What was the defensive strategy? What were they doing against New Zealand that prevented New Zealand from doing what they did to us?
Well, they played quite high on the outside, a little bit like what South Africa try and do. They discourage you from going to the edge. And what happened was Manu Tuilagi managed to pick up an intercept from Bowden Barrett relatively early on, and that sowed the seed of doubt in his head and in Mwanga's head of not throwing that pass when he could see Manu in his eye line off phase play, and other times it was Ford, other times it was Farrell or Elliot Daly. So they all just played high and kind of made that first receiver think, do you know what, the better option is back inside. And what you have to do against that is you still have to trust your catch and give, and risk a second intercept, because if you don't get to that edge, then you're completely limited to what you're able to do, and they're forcing your hand. So I also think they weren't a million miles away from being broken a number of times, but because of the ferocity of their tackling from Underhill and on players like Whitelock and Retallick and Kieran Reid, who are the go forward, who are the brains trust of that team, when they all got knocked backwards, you could just see England absolutely swell with confidence the longer the game went on. So I thought it was a tactical masterclass and a tackling masterclass as well.
So Brian, just to clarify, the way around that ferocious line speed, because it's something that we saw in Dublin at the start of the year, is basically just to stick to the process, try and get the ball out as wide as possible. Is it an option to kick over England at that point as well, or is that just a bit too panicky, and is that what they wanted to do with that tactic?
No, we saw that's what New Zealand. We saw them going to the kick pass against South Africa in the first game, and I think you can do that. Yeah, I think what you can get your out have to do is kind of running across, so you buy some time with switch plays, try and pull that defence up, and then you can go to the kick pass, or you can go to a longer skip pass if that 13 makes a decision to bite right in. So there are opportunities around it. I suppose it all gets negated. That line speed all gets negated by the speed of ruck ball. And I think that's where England won the battle as well, with Underhill and Curry having a field day, and even Wilson, when he came on, having a field day at the ruck and slowing it down. And it allows defensive alignment, and then it allows you to get good spacings and then get off the line. Whereas if you are able to have second and a half or 2 second rucks, players can't set into the positions they want to be. So it's there's a couple of different factors involved in this, but because of their selection at ruck time as well, England didn't go to dead rucks that they knew they weren't going to get. When they realised the All Blacks had one possession, they left bodies just into the defensive line and set for the next phase. And then when there was an opportunity to pilfer one, they piled numbers in and they counter-rucked and they made an absolute mess of the ruck.
How far behind England are we at this stage? When they blew us off the pitch in the Aviva at the start of the year, we kind of put it down to us being a little bit too confident and too cocky. But now it's happened again at Twickenham, and they've annihilated an All Blacks team who annihilated us. So it seems like we're quite far behind that.
Yeah, listen, rugby can turn around in a matter of weeks, though. We've seen that before. We saw it with ourselves. You know, the game after the All Blacks, we got, you know, somewhat humbled by England on our own patch, and that really took the wind out of our sails. I think things can change in sport very quickly, but at the moment, on the basis of our last performance and their last performance, the gap does seem to be pretty seismic. But I think you know, depending on whether you get your attitude right and whether you front up on any given day, I don't think we will be blown apart, you know, 9 out of 10 times. I think we're capable of living with England, but at the moment they're just buzzing with confidence. And this English team, you know, compared to where we've been over the course of the World Cup, looks to be a bit better than us for sure.
Eddie Jones obviously gave himself the flexibility of having the 2 out halves in the team for the Australia game. He made the decision to go with Farrell at 10 for the New Zealand game. He made the decision to go back and reinsert the 2 out halves and to play in a different way. There's a flexibility built into what he's done over the last 2.5, 3 seasons that comes from having Ford and Farrell and giving them both game time, using that, and then also having a different style of play. That maybe that's one of the key lessons that we need to take away from this World Cup, is that you need flexibility in your playing squad and in your style.
Yeah, I think that one of the most interesting things that Eddie has talked about, I don't know if you would have seen the press conference after the Australian game where he kind of jokingly gave out to a journalist for not getting that Ford hadn't been dropped in that game. He was just given a different role. And you know, that he wasn't afraid to go and change his 3-quarter line when Ford had such a great World Cup up to that point. You know, Henry Slade in the centre hadn't a lot of game time, but they just felt they needed a bit of a more physical backline defence against what the threats of what Australia threw. So it's a real horses for courses situation whereas now I think he feels as though, you know, the sides that he played last week in the All Blacks and probably this week as well, Ford is better suited to a great tactical kicking game, but also an ability to have great first and second receiver to get to that edge to cause them problems. There is a chance, it's a final, there's a chance that they'll get nullified by South Africa. They get drawn into that arm wrestle, and I would imagine it's not going to be a cricket score victory by England. It'll still be tight, but they still have to be brave, and they still have to try and go after, you know, the areas that they've had some success so far, and particularly last weekend. And I think that axis of Ford and Farrell and Tuolangi of sitting defenders inside, but then still being able to unleash the speed of Watson or May or Daly is a huge threat to them. And they've got their timing on their backline plays brilliant, where in previous years that being a little bit off gives defensive teams a chance to realign, whereas they've been absolutely on the money and pulling the trigger and passing very well, and that's why they've gotten some edges.
Brian, I wanted to bring up the comments that you made last week after the Ireland defeat, and how Lancaster's coaching influence and the stuff at Leinster, the being comfortable in chaos, may have had an influence with Ireland, because Ethan Asiwe during the week pretty much said exactly the same thing you said, that Ireland had taken a little bit of what was going on at Leinster in the year they were successful, and then had decided to go back to a more pre-programmed style. And I don't want to put words in Isa's mouth, but that's basically what he was saying. Leo Cullen was asked after the Zebra game at the weekend what he made of that, and he was talking about the other coaching changes in the other provinces, and just felt like there wasn't as much influence really from the provincial setup to the international setup as was being made out. He was asking, Ulster had their changes from Les Kiss from John Gibbs to Les Kiss to whoever, and Connacht the same, from Pat Lam to Keane to Andy Friend. I think maybe a little bit of the whole message got lost here. Was it not really essentially that what was going on at Leinster was something the Leinster players really enjoyed and wanted more of at international level? Was that kind of the key point that you and Isa were getting at?
Yeah, and I think my understanding of when Joe went to the national team, I think all the other provincial players, when they got a taste of Joe Schmidt coaching, they were like, oh my God, what have we missed the last number of years? This guy is the bee's knees. And they loved going there. And then when they went back to their provincial team, and this is a general statement, I'm not saying it's the case with every individual, but I don't think they felt that what they were doing provincially probably was to the same level of coaching as Joe Schmidt. And then, Stuart Lancaster and Leo come in and they offer something that the players go back and really enjoy as well. And then they have some success from it as well. So for the first time in Joe Schmidt's tenure, he's dealing with players that when he loses them out of camp, they're going into an environment that they're loving and thriving in as well. So I think human instinct is that people just potentially question an area where maybe it's not quite going as well as it once did, because now there's a new area, there's a new opportunity to evolve and play and have some success from. Maybe we can incorporate a bit of that into it. I haven't actually spoken to the players about that. I don't know if they've given me the truth around it, but I just feel that's a possibility. It looks a little bit from the outside, because I do know how much they enjoy training and playing in a Leinster jersey. And it is still the lion's share of the Irish squad that we're talking about as well.
Yeah, it seems almost as if Leinster thought they were being blamed somehow for what had happened at international level. But it was kind of the reverse, right?
It's a compliment, it's no pointing fingers here. It's like, no reason they should be getting on the defensive about it. It was just, players all of a sudden saw that there was an alternative opportunity of playing the game besides the Joe Schmidt way. And I could understand why, and maybe guys did challenge Joe a little bit and try and get them to evolve their game plan a bit. But I could understand why players would buy into the Joe way of thinking because of the success they've also had over 5 or 6 years internationally and 3 more with Leinster. So he's always had the answers. And just unfortunately this year, the game plan that we saw and the manner in which we played it didn't provide the answers.
But that should definitely be the trade-off, Brian. If you've got kind of a rugby union who is so controlling over all its players, who has all the players playing for its national team, playing within the country's boundaries week in, week out for their provinces, that there should be a little bit of experimentation within the provinces, because they're not being allowed to go abroad, they're not being allowed to actually go and see other rugby cultures and actually try other things out, that the experimentation needs to come from within, and that experimentation needs to be embraced by the national team.
I totally agree. I think we have to give an opportunity. I think that's where it's important to have foreign coaches come in and not just homegrown. I think we need a mixture of the two. Because you have to see other ways of the game being played. And that's why the overseas players are such a vital component to the provincial setups and their success, is because we get a taste of how other countries are doing it. And when you throw all of that into a pot, you work out what's best for you. And having someone like Stuart come in from an English environment, and obviously, he had huge disappointment, but he had a point to prove. But you have to remember too, England before the World Cup disappointment had finished, they'd won a couple of Six Nations and just had been beaten in a Grand Slam game 3 or 4 consecutive years. So they were on the cusp of something, and they were playing a decent style. It just, everything just landed on his desk with all the negativity landed on Stuart with Rugby World Cup. But in actual fact, he had done some really good stuff. So we're getting a flavour of that. And I think it is very important that we maintain that, and we still have, the Isas and the Doug Howletts and those players coming in to give us a taste as to what they've done within their national setups too. Yeah,
it's no harm having Stephen Larkham down in Munster as well. That's the type of level of coaching that we need to be injecting.
Totally. I think that those sort of moves are great moves. You want the great brains of the game coming and influencing, players within Ireland, because they'll have had a taste of Irish coaching, and it's good to know what the Australians are doing.
Owen makes a great point about us not letting our players go away. I definitely feel like maybe now there is an opportunity for us to allow players to go away for a couple of years in the middle of a World Cup cycle and see what the other ideas that are out there. Because if you take the example of coaching, for example, if Eoin O'Gara had just stayed in Ireland, who knows where he'd be now. But the fact that he's gone out, seen what they do at Crusaders, seen what they do in Paris, if and when at any point in the future he does come back to the Irish setup, he'll be a far better coach for having gone away. You could say the same for a lot of those players who are just behind the top rank of players who should be off playing in England. Like Chris Farrell obviously was a much better player for his year in France.
Yeah, you could. I think there is an argument for it. Of course there is. I think it's potentially a dangerous play as well, because obviously, if you have an exodus of 4 or 5 or 6 key international players and all of a sudden they're playing 30 or 35 games for their club in France or in England, and then you're looking for them to play 10 internationals on top of that, it's going to have a negative impact on their on a season. That's the simple fact of it. You can't play 40 to 45 high octane games and expect yourself to have a consistent performance and not pick up injuries over the course of a calendar year. So, it's something that I don't think the union will concede. I think they're going to maintain their plan of not picking players that travel overseas, and I can understand why, because not that long ago we were talking about what a brilliant setup it was, and then all of a sudden, just because of this disappointment, now we've got to completely have a rethink as to why it's all gone wrong. You make a point, Ger, that some players going away, it will improve them, but I think an even stronger point would be that they get looked after so well that they are given the best opportunity to play their best rugby in the green shirt, because they don't play that much for their provinces.
All right, we'll definitely come back to that afterwards. It turns out we've got 4 whole years to try and work out what's wrong with our system. So it sounded like you're aiming for an England, or predicting an England victory in a narrow enough game at the weekend, Brian?
Yeah, do you know what? It might be a bit unpopular in Ireland, but I hope it's an English victory. I think they deserve it. They're the best team in the competition at the moment. They play the best rugby, and I think it'll be good to shake up the world order. I think it's good that South Africa are back and are a big threat. I think that's important to world rugby, that our superpowers are back playing the way we expect them to play. But on the basis of that semi-final, God, I hope we don't get anything of that standard. That Wales South African semi-final, 81 kicks out of hand, was no advertisement for the game. So I hope that England go out and play expressively the way they have done so far, and get after South Africa. And if they get an early score, I think we might see a bit more of an open game, but I reckon it won't be particularly high scoring. So yeah, I've been mediocre on my predictions so far, so I'm going to go with a 16-9 win to England.
All right, good stuff, Brian. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, talk to you, lads. Bye.
Brian, I just got live from Tokyo. A 16-9 win for England against the Springboks is his prediction.
Yeah, it's a nice prediction there.
South Africa have really good backs, and when they spin the ball wide, they're very successful. Why don't they do it more?
It's a good question, really. I don't know. I suppose they didn't have Colby available at the weekend. Pimpy's a fairly brilliant winger on the other side. Some would even have him ahead of Colby in the overall.
This was a philosophical thing as opposed to the identity of the players. This was an X's and O's as opposed to the Jims and Joes.
Is it a case of the fact that actually they're just waiting for the battering to be finished, and they keep battering, and then they put the pieces out wide? I guess they did go out wide a good bit against Japan, didn't they, very early on? That was a bit of a crazy game, fairly disjointed early on in the game, but that was maybe down to Japan being fairly loose, and they were picking up interceptions here and there.
Yeah, Japan inside their own 22 from the kickoff kicked the ball wide inside their own 22.
Yeah, it was lunacy.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant to watch. Okay, 8:18 this Tuesday morning. We're sticking with rugby here in OTBAM. There was one man who did call England's win at the weekend. Have a look.
The kicking game is a really important part of unsettling New Zealand, but I think England have got to play as well, because if you're trying to contain them and stop them and slow them down, it's a very, very dangerous scenario, because they can generate slow ball into really quick ball as well.
Yeah, all right, just quickly before we let you go, Quinny, if you will, give us your prediction for that and the second semi on Sunday.
It's only a gut feeling, Adrian. I think that game is going to be quite close, and on form, New Zealand. I think the bookies have them 10 points, maybe 8 or 10 points winning that game. I have a feeling that this England group are very, very mentally well prepared, and I think there's a lot of top class players in that group, and I think they will physically match New Zealand. I think they may cause a bit of a surprise tomorrow.
Right.
I think South Africa, given on what we've seen from Wales last week, and Liam Williams is a huge loss. I think he would have been really crucial. I know Halfpenny's a good player, but Liam Williams is brilliant in the air. I think South Africa will probably just edge that one.
So to be absolutely clear, you're calling England?
England, South Africa final.
Wow.
There's
Big call.
nobody else calling England.
Big call. No, I haven't heard many. I haven't heard many who aren't English.
Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
That was a good call.
Well, look, it's I hate saying I told you so, but I told you so.
You did. You definitely did. Where did that confidence in England come from?
I just think that some people will probably criticise this and say, well, Ireland are so far behind. But when you get a massive win like that, like New Zealand got against Ireland, it was easier than they expected. Everything worked out for them. Their precision, their accuracy was superb. And you get a real emotional high from that. It's very difficult to replicate that the week after, particularly when you're playing a team who have so much strength, power, and are going to be highly motivated on the other side. They're playing against the world champions, the favourites for the tournament. So their emotion is going to go through the roof. And New Zealand's, it's just hard to maintain it. I think they always backed themselves, even hearing Kieran Reid after the match saying, look, where do New Zealand go from here? And he said, look, we're All Blacks, and you know, every time you put on the jersey, there's an expectation, and we'll come again. And that is kind of the mentality of them. But I just think England were so highly motivated. And Eddie Jones is saying this for the last couple of years, that, you know, he's pointing to this semi-final, and if you're going to win a World Cup, you've got to beat New Zealand. He said that several times. So it wasn't solely that, but I think because they're a very good side as well, and they have a lot of very, very good players. I think there's world-class players in that team, and when you're winning big games, you need guys in form. Atoje, Curry, Hill, Vunipola brothers, that's 5 in the pack. Courtney Laws has been really good, Sinclair good, Jamie George, so they have a lot of consistency in selection there. And then Farrell, I'm a massive fan of Owen Farrell. I think he's been, for me, the player of the tournament. He mightn't have stood out, but I just, as much as some other guys with some little bits of brilliance and stuff, but I just think his consistency, his kicking, his defence, and his leadership, he's just been immense. And Tuolangi in the back line, you know, what a difference in a couple of years. He was struggling so bad for a couple of years. So, and then you look at their wingers, May and Watson. So they, right across the board, you're naming good, incredibly tough, talented players. And that's why I just had this feeling that England would really go after them physically. And listen, we said at the week of the Irish game that New Zealand has shown vulnerability this year, and they have. The scoreline flattered them a little bit against us. Now, Ireland were really poor on the day, but they're not as good as the 2015 team. There's no way they are.
They're definitely not, no, and they just don't have the street smart, that 2015 team. The two young lads in the back row, like, to be as experienced as they are at this age is a testimony to the ability of the England team to pick players who they want to be ready for a World Cup, as opposed to picking players who were the players in situ. I just wonder if we had 2 players coming through, would we have made them wait behind the lads who were already there, and then come the World Cup time being like, oh yeah, you're number 23, you know, you're very close to the team, as opposed to England putting them in 18 months ago and saying, right, we're going to be our player in the World Cup who take us there irrespective of how young you are.
Well, the problem is Ireland had a settled back row, didn't they? And they performed so well in 2017, 18. Peter O'Mahony was on the lines, Stander was on the lines, Dan Levy had come through, Sean O'Brien was on the lines. I remember sitting in the show one morning with you and Owen, and we probably picked 10 back rows that could potentially start for Ireland. They were all in such good form in 17, 18. So the difference with England is that you couldn't probably nail down their 2 wing forwards in the last 2 or 3 years. You couldn't pick a back row. Vunipola was probably the only one that you could say was going to be definitely there. So, I think I've asked myself that question. We put guys in. Well, we put in Larmour, we put in Andrew Porter, we put in James Ryan, we put in Levy. Now, the question is, should they have started this time? Should Larmour have started? Yes.
So Larmour,
Levy was in.
I think Larmour is the perfect example, because I think so. It's a similar enough situation where there were acceptable back row options available for England, but the one that they thought was going to give them the best chance of winning the World Cup was giving somebody the 10, 12 caps you need to get to, where you're no longer kind of, oh Jesus, this is the anthem, this is the bit where, all that stuff that comes with the terror of being a new cap that you just get out of your system over the course of 18 months, and then you're like, oh, I deserve to be here. Like, we really needed Larmour to start. We probably needed Conway to start in some ways as well, if we were going to be competitive.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, given the way the two of them played against Scotland, you think they played superbly. They were dangerous. They were good defensively. They brought loads of energy and quality, and we lacked that little bit of energy, didn't we, in the Japan game, in the New Zealand game, and we lacked it a little bit in Russia as well. Even though we got the bonus point, but it wasn't a good enough performance against Russia. So I think the difference probably with Curry and Underhill has been around a while, to be fair, is maturity. And if you're going to play guys in the back row, you've got to be hard, you've got to be tough, you've got to be abrasive, and you've got to be strong and mature. So it's grand saying we'll throw in one of the under-20s now this year from straight into Six Nations. But I think the age is one thing, but strength and power and maturity is another. And they're incredibly mature, you know what I mean? Curry, I stood beside Curry in Twickenham for that World Cup warm-up game. And he's massive. He's just so physically big and strong. He looks like a 30-year-old back row. It's hard to believe that he's only 21. Underhill has been around for a couple of years. He's been playing. He played in the Pro 14 with Ospreys. Then he's played with Bath, and he's kind of been fast-tracked into the England setup. So there's definitely an argument to say, would we play him? I think Joe probably would have thrown him in there if we didn't have a settled back row. But we had this settled back row for the last 3 years, and that's the problem. The problem is the guys who delivered in 16, 17, 18 for Ireland, just their form wasn't good enough this year, and we probably didn't have the guys then to grasp, particularly in the forward pack, to throw in there. And so, I think in a sense, he's been planning this because England targeted Underhill. I think he could have played for Wales as well, and he was playing with the Ospreys, and they went after him to get into Bath to come back into the English system. So they've been phenomenal players, though, haven't they?
Yeah. Is it just down to form, though, Alan? Because if you look at our back row on paper, like the reason why we were so excited when you were picking your list of back rows in that depth chart is because you can get any amount of injuries and still have a top-class back row. And you go into the World Cup with a Van der Fleer, Peter O'Mahony, CJ Standard back row, which is a pretty good back row. Like, it's not a million miles away from Curry and Underhill, despite the form argument. I accept that. There has to be a bit more here that Eddie Jones can get that much out of their back row, that much of the breakdown, which is an area that Ireland thrived in and have thrived in under Joe Schmidt for so long.
They are a different type of player, Owen. There's no way anyone is as good as Underhill and Curry in World Rugby at the moment. It's just as simple as that. Maybe Ardy Sevilla in the back row, Hooper and Pocock, when they were playing really well, probably had the same effect. But the reality of these guys is they affect everything. And I keep saying this about the back row. I know I played there myself, but I really, truly believe it. Back rows can win and lose games to you. They can just destroy the opposition if they're unbelievably competitive, fit, strong, abrasive. And both of those guys are having so many big moments in the game, turning the ball over in crucial areas, making big tackles, just really tormenting the opposition. And so they're at a different level. And I haven't seen our back row do that. I think Peter O'Mahony against New Zealand last year in November had 3 or 4 massive moments, but they're different types of players. Curry and Hill are the full package. They can carry, they can tackle, they can be devastating at the breakdown. I think they're just your real modern day, energetic, devastating back row players who are just on the front foot, and they just create so much. So our depth chart that we looked at had a number of guys in there. Levy, I think if you had more depth, it might have even. I think if Levy, Sean O'Brien were fit,
Conan.
Conan as well was a loss, yeah, and he played well against Scotland. So I just think, look, maybe there was a bit too much pressure. Look, maybe this is a little bit of 07 where the back row of the team was picked. You look at the team that played against New Zealand, it was probably you could have picked that 12 months ago. So hindsight's a great thing. And look, I said this about Joe Schmidt and his selection that he believed these players could deliver and they would deliver again, and unfortunately it just never happened, and we were too static. So there's mistakes have been made, absolutely, and that's the problem.
Can I ask you about the point you made about New Zealand having a bit of a come down after the England game? There's a good chance that England will have a bit of a come down after the New Zealand game. Eddie Jones has obviously been here before, and successfully and unsuccessfully, once with the when he was involved with the Springboks in 07, and obviously in 2003 when they didn't get things right for the final, but by the narrowest of margins. What do they do this week to make sure that they're not on a come down after that massive victory? Because it was, Brian O'Driscoll said, it's one of the best performances he's ever seen.
Well, they don't talk about it too much, I think, because sometimes if you talk about that situation too much, and it can maybe inhibit you a little bit. I think they just have to relax and really enjoy the week. And I think, in fairness to Eddie Jones, they did all that stuff really well last week. I think he kind of set the tone with his press conferences, saying that, look, the pressure is not us. We're going to enjoy the week and we're going to just train well. And sometimes you do everything right, Ger, and it just doesn't happen for you. And you can have that kind of static kind of feel about yourself, and it can kind of radiate throughout the team. I think that's the challenge for them. And Warren Gatland said it. Sometimes teams play their semi-final and then they struggle to perform in the final. It's going to be a very, very different game. And I think England were so much on the front foot, and they were the aggressors this week. They've got to find a different way of doing that. Obviously, they've got to bring uber aggression again, but South Africa won't go. I think they won't physically outgun them every time. So they've got to play smart and not get sucked into a kicking game with South Africa. South Africa to really try and pressurise you and take the sting out of the game, if you like. So if they get the kind of front foot ball they got the other day, and the pace and the width they played with, and Dricko was right. It was one of the best performances I'd ever seen against New Zealand as well. I think England in 2003 in Wellington with 13 players when they beat the All Blacks, that one kind of comes to mind, aside from the weekend. But South Africa have, and I was just looking at a stat, Wales averaged 1.6 metres against South Africa for their carries. And that's the lowest of any side ever in a Rugby World Cup. So what England have got to do is they've got to make sure that they're not stopped at source, and they're not slowed down, and they're not frustrated, and they're not forced into errors. I think Wales had 20 turnovers or something against South Africa at the weekend as well. So they'll get a different kind of strength and pressure this week. They've got to stay calm. And I think that was probably one of the most impressive things about the weekend is they stayed calm in a really big environment. They were, there was fury going through the minds and the bodies, but it was kind of controlled aggression. Their discipline was very good. They didn't go off their feet. They didn't shoot out of the line and give lots of penalties away. So it's just about staying calm and being patient against South Africa, because South Africa are the ones now that the emotion is going to be going through the roof. So look, I still think England are probably, England are the better side, and they're the better footballing side. But it'll be really interesting. I don't think this is going to be like some people think after the weekend, that they're going to run away with it.
Is the final in Yokohama or is it in the Tokyo Stadium?
It's in Tokyo Stadium.
Right, so it's only a 45,000 crowd. And the Yokohama is only about an hour outside, is it, from...
Yeah, you have a man beside you there. What happened and where do we go from here, we'll tell you.
Ultimately.
Where do we go from here?
Ultimately.
Where do we go from here?
Owen was staying out in Yokohama. But look, it's at the end of the day, it's I think it's how both sides deal with the pressure. You can imagine, Sia Khaleesi did a video after the game, the Springboks captain, with all the players in the dressing room and talking about the support they're receiving at home. So it's huge for both countries, I think. That's my buzzword, isn't it? Huge.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was asking is they've got to stay in the same hotel the whole time. They were staying in the hotel that we were staying in, and they were hanging. It was, they could blend in, they could blend out. There was enough South African fans for them to be able to sense that there was a World Cup on, but there was also plenty of opportunities for them just to escape and wander off into the night in Tokyo. It's a low key reaching of a final as you could possibly have coming through against Wales in that manner for South Africa. So it's perfect for them for Rassie.
Yeah, it is. They have 6 days turnaround, though. That's the problem. So I think they're the team that have been in Japan the longest. They've been probably there nearly 8 weeks now, because they played Japan, I think, 2 weeks before the World Cup kicked off. So it's one last push for them, really, as well. So it's really, I think, sometimes you can get a bit of cabin fever, but not for a final. This is going to be excitement for everyone. This is the ultimate, and it's really interesting to see how both teams will kind of manage that. And I really hope we get a brilliant final, because
we need.
I think South Africa they're not gonna kick the leather off the ball and beat England. They've actually got to play. I think if you remember 2 years ago when they went to Wellington, they scored 5 or 6 tries against New Zealand. And it was an amazing game and they beat South Africa, or they beat New Zealand there. You think maybe they've got to create a little bit more than just kick the ball. But England kicked the ball 32 times against New Zealand as well. Yeah. Sometimes it gets lost in translation, if you like, when you have a really front foot performance. Nobody's counting the kicks. It's really when you have a negative performance, people are going kicking afterwards. So England kicked the ball a fair bit as well. So let's hope we don't have the kind of performance or game we had on Sunday.
All right, Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
That's Alan Quinlan live from Tokyo this morning, giving us his thoughts on the weekend. We're going to be with the Irish hockey goalkeeper David Harte in a few moments after the men's controversial exit from the Olympics after their defeat to Canada. First, though, let's bring you a clip from the latest episode of Off the Bench, because the women's hockey team have a massive qualifier this weekend.
Tell us, where are you and what's next?
I think it's been, obviously I've been in the squad for a long time, and this will be the 3rd Olympic qualification that I've been to. And it's interesting to see the progression, because actually for the 2012 Olympics in London, we were quite a way off the pace, in terms of trying to qualify. Then we got so close in 2015. But actually, if you see the progression of the team over the years, we definitely are playing world-class hockey at the minute. And so even though we didn't make it in 2015, I actually think it's been sort of the foundations for, the progression that we've had to get to this point today. And I think the team is at its strongest it's ever been since I've been in it anyway.
Yeah, so fingers crossed the women qualified this weekend. That was Off the Bench host Cliona Foley, joined by Ireland national hockey team members Nikki Daly, Sarah Hawkshaw and Lena Tice as they prepare for their next big target. Let's talk about the men's, though, because they missed out on 2020 Tokyo Olympics in controversial fashion at the weekend. David Harte is with us to talk about it this morning. David, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't fully understand exactly what happened or how the rules applied or were applied correctly or incorrectly in the last play of the game. For people who are just coming to this story, you guys were on the verge of qualification when basically with the last play of the game you got called for a penalty. What happened?
Oh, it's one of those stories that's been going around the heads probably of everyone involved for the last 48 hours now, and we had the ball with about 30 seconds to go. Canada broke away and managed to enter our circle under pressure from one of our defenders, and a Canadian striker went to the ground, and we thought, right, the on-field umpires gave just a wide ball, like nothing was going on, no issues, no hassle, and of course Canada had a video referral left, and I think they were all pretty looking for a bit of chance really to go, listen, we might as well use it. And they went and they asked, we're just looking for, I think it was a body tackle or something was their exact words. And I went upstairs to the video referral, and the video umpire came back with a decision of a penalty stroke. Still right now can't quite fathom the decision or the outcome of that. And it has cost an awful lot of us a life's work going towards another Olympic Games, and for some guys the first chance at going to an Olympic Games, so we're all absolutely devastated.
in retrospect, was there any case to be made that it was a penalty?
No, honestly, to be honest, in my opinion, absolutely not. If you go through the bylaws and all of them, there's plenty of them. The video umpire wasn't asked anything with regards to is it a penalty stroke or not. You know, it goes up to the TMO, or the video referral as we refer to it. And he was asked a simple question, you know, looking for a body check. That was it. It wasn't asked to deem it, is it a penalty, is it whatever? And yeah, to be honest, what we found out yesterday was even harder to take, was that I think it was the Argentinian, he was an Argentinian man, the Argentines' first time doing the video referral. And it happened to be at obviously one of the most defining and crucial moments of our hockey careers. It was amateur.
Is that usual, David, for the video referral to actually make a decision like that, or is the usual process for him or her to give the advice to the on-field umpire to make the final decision?
Yeah, sometimes it can be a lot more straightforward, you know, simply like if an umpire on the pitch, both of them didn't see a foot in the circle or something, they can go, we didn't see it, so we'll go upstairs. And then suddenly, yeah, it's a video umpire's decision will be standing going, listen, yeah, it's hit a foot of the defender, so it is a penalty corner. That's the advice, but not to something like upgrade it to a penalty stroke. And in such a key phase of the actual the match itself, it's just... Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I literally can't get my head around it still, and whether it's the jet lag or whether it's just still the emotion behind it, it just doesn't make sense for us.
So is there any avenue open to Irish hockey now to appeal this, or do you just have to get on with it and accept it?
It's a good question. I really don't think you can just let it sit there. And by no means are we on a witch hunt and we're going after this video umpire, but to be honest, lads, it's far away, not only from a humane point of view, where, you know, you've got guys now finishing up their careers with international hockey because of this, the lasting decision. It has a lasting knock-on effect with regards to sponsorship, with regards to world ranking points, with regards to so many more impacts than people obviously will ever know. And the bitterly disappointing thing is that video umpire probably hasn't maybe thought about it since.
Yeah, you would hope probably they have. I mean, I can only assume that the hockey's governing body has been made aware of the fact that you're unhappy with how this whole thing transpired. You
would hope so, but at the end of the day, we got a response, or Stephen Finlater from the Hook Hockey, who does an awful lot for hockey in Ireland, received a response from the FIH being like, the umpire's decision is final, and we do not go into, by principle, comment on individual umpiring decisions. So your typical standard kind of politically correct decision coming from the powers that be.
Yeah, because Johnny Waterson has parsed through the FIH General Tournament Regulations, Outdoor Competitions, March 2019 rule book, and he says that there are two little articles here. Rule 6.1, the final decision, including any matter of interpretation, remains with the match umpires and not the video umpire. And then 6.2, all other decisions remain with the match umpires. So that suggests, David, that the on-pitch umpires needed to have a final decision on this, and perhaps they didn't, and perhaps there is a possible loophole.
There potentially is, but we, as Hockey Ireland, our manager and our performance director went to the TDs and the FIH officials after the game to plead our case, because you have up until 2 hours. You don't have to sign the match form, because then technically it's not official, and you can put in an appeal straight away. It's actually costs quite a bit of money, something like €2,000 to €3,000 that you have to put in straight away if you're looking to appeal. But we were told by the FIH that literally that we can't appeal because it's an umpire's decision. You could appeal, for example, if it was a TD's decision, if there was a mess up with the 8 seconds in the shootouts, or if the clock went on too long, or anything like that, but we can't appeal an umpire's decision.
Yeah, so that might well be the end of that, at least in terms of the legalities. As you say, though, there's a knock-on impact for careers and for sponsorship of the sport. Is there any chance that maybe you can use this as a rallying cry and get people on board to, I don't know, to try and mitigate the impact of not having the team at the Olympic Games?
I don't know. As I'm here at breakfast this morning in my house in Utrecht with my Olympic cup from Rio 2016, there's obviously going to be pointers and suggestions towards the games all over people's houses, and obviously guys' lives were directed towards this. And I know mine in particular, I unfortunately wasn't able to take part, so my heart goes out to those guys, obviously, who were playing in the match and who were up close. And I think it was literally 1 second to go away from that, and we're all devastated by it. But right now, I can't really start thinking about the future because it's still so raw. And the hardest thing to accept is that I was there embracing and hugging some of my teammates who I played with for 12 to 13 years. For those lads to have to say, yeah, thanks for the memories and thanks for the years, it's something that you would never obviously have to go through given the circumstances and how it all came about. It's something that I never obviously managed, and I still can't get my head around, but it's just so cruel. It's just, yeah, no words can describe it right now.
On a personal level, it must have been incredibly hard to watch the shootout as well. As far as I know, you got injured just before the trip to Vancouver, so you would have been playing in the shootout and you would have at least been able to have some influence.
Yeah, you can look at it that way, guys, but to be completely honest, it's not about one individual. No individual is greater than our team and our squad, and every single player who was out there was doing their best and what they could do for our country, and we're in the best position to do so. And again, to be so close and yet now so far away, just can't even begin to explain it. And yeah, as I said, I put out a tweet yesterday. It was the only reason why I put a tweet out is because I couldn't actually physically express myself. I had to do so digitally over social media. So that gives an idea of the pain and kind of anguish that we're all feeling.
Yeah, I think anybody who saw the footage will realise just how emotionally invested everybody was and how close you were to have it stolen away at the very last second is obviously heartbreaking. You know, we kind of talked there about there not really being that many avenues open, but do you want the powers that be in Irish hockey to take this absolutely as far as they can to the nth degree to make sure that there's no stone left unturned in a bid to, I don't know, get a replay or something, or force some action, or at least make sure that, you know, you don't have as inexperienced a video referee making these decisions to decide so important matches in future?
From an athlete's and a player's perspective, what I really hope is that Hockey Ireland and our CEO, high performance director, all of those involved, our board, to really make sure that this never ever happens again. From an FIH point of view, where inexperienced umpires are assigned to such crucial games, and some guy is put into a box that has never done a video referral in a match in his life. That for me is first and foremost, that it never happens again, that any player will have to witness or experience or go through what we have been doing for the last 48 hours. And then secondly, of course, yeah, I really hope that they take it to the next level, because it has knock-on and lasting effects for the governing body, for Hockey Ireland, for generally the sport in our country for men. And how to quantify that is obviously really difficult, but over the coming weeks, months and years is something that will only have obviously the lasting marks from what happened in Canada.
Yeah. Look, there's a chance for some revenge this weekend when the women's team are playing on Saturday and Sunday against Canada in Donnybrook. You would hope that the attention this week will again galvanise the hockey community in Ireland, and that there'll be full houses, and that the women's team will gain some revenge over Canada by knocking them out and qualifying for the Olympics this weekend.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that the Irish women will go on and do so in front of a packed crowd in Donnybrook. And this decision has gone further than ever imagined outside of just the Irish hockey community. It's from players that I played with all over the world, in Australia, in South America, in Africa, in Europe, teammates from my club in Holland here, for all guys from Team GB players, from everyone is just completely baffled by how this has all happened. And unfortunately, we have to be the sob story once again. And it's just amateur hour from the FIH. And I really, really, really do hope moving forward that this will never ever happen again to a team that's looking to try and go on to achieve their dreams. David,
we'll leave it there. Thanks a million for talking to us this morning.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
It's David Harte there, the Irish hockey goalkeeper, injured at the weekend and unfortunately unable to take his part in the shootout. A reminder, the first leg is scheduled to get underway at 7 o'clock on Saturday evening in Donnybrook. It's the 2nd of November. The second leg takes place at 7:10 on Sunday, the 3rd of November. So it's back-to-back against Canada in Donnybrook on Saturday and Sunday for the women's team. So what are we at? 8:48 this morning, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball here, OTBAM. We're talking football with Stephen Kelly next. Nathan and David Myler were doing the commentary for the Liverpool Spurs game. David Myler tweeted a picture of himself in his Liverpool hat beforehand, so completely unbiased commentary from him, but he is best mates with Jordan Henderson, so maybe that explains it. Here they are having a chat afterwards. Here's Henderson talking about beating Spurs.
Yeah, it's always nice to get on the score sheet. It's been a while. I think the last one was against Southampton away last season, so yeah, delighted to get on the score sheet and win the game. That's the most important thing. So overall, we're delighted with the performance and obviously the result.
What was it you said in commentary, David, that you'd scored at Anfield more recently?
Yeah. Do you remember the 5-1?
I remember,
yeah, yours is 4 years ago. Mine's only 2 years ago. Boy, no, I was happy to see you score. Obviously, you needed the way they were playing. They were so deep. It was hard to break them down. And you probably needed that slight bit of luck with your miss-hit volley.
Steady.
Where are you on goal scoring? Is it a part of your game you're at the start of every season thinking I need to score a few more, or is it a part of your game where you're going, you know what, I have a very different role in this team?
Yeah, it's always nice to chip in, with goals, but at the end of the day, for us, it doesn't matter who scores, as the forward player scores all the goals and we win games. That's the most important thing. I think it's nice for other players to contribute, of course, but first and foremost, it's about doing my job, my role within the team. And hopefully now and again I can chip in, but the most important thing is performance, making sure that I'm performing for the team and everybody else is performing and winning games.
Strange game to analyse in a way, in that you were totally dominant for large parts, but also felt like you had to dig really deep to actually go and win it.
Yeah, in the end, I think definitely, the last 5-10 minutes, we've sort of sat back a little bit when we took the lead and defended for the last 10 minutes. So yeah, we had to grind it out, but for large parts of the game, I thought we played so well and deserved the win in the end.
And a lot of games like that now, where teams sit back, defend, particularly with Tottenham getting the early goal. Do you feel as a group you're far better able to deal with that type of team now than maybe 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago?
I think we reacted in the right way. It's not easy going a goal behind early on, but we still had a lot of time left, and I thought we reacted so well, and that's down to mentality. We keep going, keep fighting right until the very end, and that's something we've done for a while now. So we need to keep that going right until the end of the season. And like I said, hopefully we can continue on that form.
Yes, that's Jordan Henderson speaking with the lads after the 2-1 win for Liverpool against Spurs, which was live on Off the Ball yesterday. Stephen Kelly's with us this morning. Stephen, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. You?
We should talk about that game first, really, because we'll get to the Arsenal situation a little bit later on. But just how important was it for Liverpool to grind that out, having gone down 1-0 early? It's a different type of win from what we've been seeing for them recently, and it shows that they can win games in different ways.
Yeah, it's just a performance from a team that looks like they're going to win the league, basically. They've got the grip between their teeth. They have a level of defiance where they, even if they come up against the ropes, they're still willing to come back. And like that win ugly, everybody expects Liverpool to run over teams and just be always on form, the front three into linking and just great play, whereas they didn't have it all their own way yesterday. Even though they had most of the possession, they had times where it was frustrating. Tottenham were hard to break down, and they just kept going, and going well down early made it difficult for them, but it was a sign of a very good side that they were able to come back and just keep going at them and keep breaking them down.
At any point did you think they wouldn't get back into the game?
When Son hit the bar, I thought if he had put that away, I think that would have been it. I'm not sure they would have been able to come back from 2-0 down, but when it was, as soon as I hit the bar, I thought that's it, they're going to come back and win the game.
Because they're Liverpool?
Because they're Liverpool, yeah, because they're Liverpool. And it was at Anfield, and Tottenham, at the moment, are not as confident or as capable as what they were last season, going back quite a bit last season, but they're not as good as what they were. Defensively, they struggle. They don't look to be in any way the same team that they were. There's so many players underperforming, Ali, Eriksson, Rose, Aurier, these guys who, not Aurier and Rose, but Eriksson, who's been instrumental for them for the first few seasons, for the last few seasons, and when he doesn't perform to the level that you expected him at, and even the position he was in, he was playing almost right wing, and he was having to cover Robertson all game, and from the outset I said there's no way he's going to be able to continue to do that all game, because Robertson is relentless. He will literally still make those runs in the last 5 seconds of a game, and at time you could see he was just getting away from Ericsson, and he wasn't going to track him back, and he couldn't catch him. And I just don't think that was part of his game, and he didn't want to do that either. So it was difficult. But from Tottenham, there were some good points, and they showed a lot more resilience than they had been able to, but it was still tough.
It was always going to be a game where the fullbacks were going to be instrumental. Every game at Liverpool is.
Yeah.
But on Spurs' point of view, it was too. Jordan Henderson getting moved out, essentially to guard Danny Rose for a section of the game, was a particularly interesting tactical shift.
Yeah, well, because Henderson's got that ability, he was a winger, so he understands the role a little bit more, and he's got the drive and determination to track people and stay with them and continue. So, like I said, Ericsson didn't want to do it against Robertson and struggles to do that part of the game. You want Ericsson in the 10, not running back towards on goal, where Henderson is happy to do his bit for the team now where he plays, because he just feels that's his role as captain. He is to come in and be whatever the manager wants him to be at any point. He's willing to do that and put that shift in. And Rose is a very good option going forward, and he sometimes his touches are excellent. His final delivery can be questionable at times, but he can be a very good option. And for Tottenham towards the end, they had a little spell where he looked like he was influencing the game, and that's when they shifted Henderson out there.
Are we in a case now at Liverpool where their midfield is simply a horses for courses situation every single week, that there isn't a form three midfielders? It's who is best suited to the specific man-marking tasks or offensive tasks or whatever Klopp requires on a given week?
Yeah, he seems to base his team tactically around the team they're playing against and set his team up in the best way that they can go and win a match. And it's not even... Sometimes you see teams set up in a way that they're just going to defend against the team. Liverpool don't do that. He sets his team up and his midfield in a way that gives them the best chance of winning this game, not the best way of just staying in the game. So it's extremely encouraging for the manager, and what is so good to see is their midfield are all happy with it. They don't seem to... There's no disgruntlement between the players. They seem to be happy to come in and out and stick to their task, which is the sign of an amazing coach and an amazing team, that all these players are sticking together.
Is this not his first choice midfield, though?
Yeah, I would say this is his first choice.
I'm not sure.
With Fabinho,
Fabinho, Wijnaldum and Jordan Henderson.
It has been. Yeah. It has been. I really do think Oxlade-Chamberlain is going to have a say in that conversation over the next couple of weeks.
Instead of who?
You see, that is Jordan Henderson, for me, if you're looking at the possible qualities in a player as a person who drops out, but if you're looking at the possible leadership qualities or the ability to give up what his abilities are to do a job like he did on Danny Rose, then he's top of the queue. So it's a very, very tough call to make. And perhaps it is somebody like Wijnaldum who does drop out for talents of Oxlade-Chamberlain. Like for Manchester City, I know we're 2 weeks out, or just under 2 weeks out from that game. Who are you picking for that? Assuming that Oxlade-Chamberlain is coming more into form again, does he force his way in there, or is it an unchanged team? Is the Spurs team, that's the team now?
That's the team.
I don't think Oxlade-Chamberlain has enough games in his legs to get into that team now. Not for Man City, considering how well they control the ball in centre midfield. And you've someone like Kevin De Bruyne, you're going to want a Henderson to kick him out of Fabinho to get round them and work hard. Where Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's encouraged to... Klopp has changed his game in the sense that he wants him to be that forward-thinking midfielder, getting forward and trying to get goals. He always said, I encourage him to shoot more, get more assists because for his ability, and that's what he wants of him. And I just don't think physically he's probably ready for a game as big as Man City to be able to cope with their midfield.
Over the course of the season, is there a chance for him to replace... So let's give him 10 games, let's give him 15 games where he plays all the League Cup games, plays in the Champions League, and begins to be close enough to first team selection. Who's he getting in his head of?
If you were to say fully fit all those four players, who would you think are the best four players, or the best three out of those four? And you probably would say Wijnaldum, Fabinho and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Based on...
Ahead of Henderson?
Yeah, based on ability and what they can offer the team. Fully fit, full raring to go, I would say that's three. But what Henderson offers at the moment, and why he seems to always defy the odds and logic as he gets back into the team, and he seems to be really important in scoring a goal the other day, which he hasn't scored for a while. So his importance, even though sometimes you think, he can be replaced, he always seems to stay in there.
It's so easy to make a comparison between this Liverpool side and Alex Ferguson's Manchester United side, just in terms of finding a way to win a game. But there is kind of like a Darren Fletcher-esque quality to Jordan Henderson, where you're like, this guy shouldn't be part of a title-winning team consistently, but he is. And
they love him.
And they love him, and he's brilliant.
Yeah.
So perhaps the comparisons aren't so kind of loose or aren't so lazy, that there is kind of an element of this team that is a title winner in weight.
Yeah, I know, definitely. what they've been shown is that ability because they haven't been steamrolling teams and that free-flowing football that you expect from them. Like I said, they had the lion's share of possession. They kept it really well, but you just expect them to roll over teams. And when they can't do that, they need to find another way to win and to play. And they've been able. Tottenham was a big example because going 1-0 down and showing the resilience and determination. And I think the back four have been excellent, but the centre-back pairing has changed quite a lot throughout the season. I feel that has not been an issue, but something that they've been trying to find the best combination to have with Van Dijk. He's obviously going to start, and he's probably one of the best players in the team, but who's going beside him? And with Matip going to be injured now for a little while, I think, and Lovren Gomez has been not really done it, so it's that's the only position that I think is up for grabs. Really, someone hasn't nailed down that spot yet, but they just look like a very accomplished all-round side that's capable of winning in any way possible now. And that ugly side of the game they're showing, which is encouraging. In a way, it's a pity that the rest of the Premier League hasn't managed to nick a draw or beat them a bit more often, because the rest of the season so far has been really interesting. If you look at how Chelsea are doing, if you look at how Leicester are doing, like Leicester and Chelsea are 2 points behind Man City. Yeah. If Liverpool didn't exist this year, we'd be like, look, Man City are going to run away with it eventually. But it's interesting how well Christian Pulisic scores a hat-trick at the weekend, right? 2 weeks ago, people were briefing about how he was too scrawny to play in the Champions League. He was not going to make it in the Premier League. And since then, he's come off the bench in Europe, played really well, and started. And it seems like Lampard's timing was amazing. It's like it was almost the way, not to the same extent, but when Klopp took over at Liverpool, going back to and with Robertson, he didn't introduce him straight away because he felt like he wasn't ready to do what he needed him to do. Yeah. Lampard with Pulisic is similar. It's not for as long a period as Robertson, but he didn't think he was ready at the start, and he's been kind of easing him into it, and then he released him in a game like Burnley, which he felt like he could have an impact, and he's gone and scored a hat-trick. So it looks like genius managing from Lampard, and if he can continue on like that, it's amazing. But Chelsea have surpassed what they could have imagined this season, and especially with the young players coming into the fore, scoring goals, being creative, and then to think that someone like Rudiger, who I would have expected to be instrumental in their back four for them this season, has not really played as well, and Kante. So those two players that haven't been involved, and if they can come back and influence them, they put themselves in a good chance. Yeah, that's the thing, that you kind of think about what Lampard has done. I think you were making the point last week, Ger, about the fact that sometimes the transfer ban can be seen as a blessing in disguise. You've been forced to put young players in. But really, you haven't necessarily. I mean, Tomori coming in and being... No. It's too early to call anybody a stalwart this early in their career, but he looks like a fella of way more experience than his years would suggest. You talk about the midfield as well, Kante perhaps being in and out, but you look at Sarri last season, and I was thinking to myself that the midfield partnership of Jorginho, especially Jorginho last year, and Kovacic beside him, were a partnership that were just ripe for the picking, that they had so much growth to go under. And I felt kind of sorry for Sarri in that respect, that perhaps it was just a little bit of a bedding in period into the Premier League. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe Lampard is just a phenomenal manager and is able to do that. Yeah. But no, when you look at Kovacic and Jorginho the other day, oh my God, Kovacic, some of the play, when he was getting pressed in his own half, and he turned in between two or three players, broke forward, his passing ability, his dribbling, his strength, they look like just so rejuvenated, and I suppose they've got such good legs and around them that makes a difference. But the point I've made as well about the Chelsea teams, that everybody's gone on about these young players. There's only probably a handful of them that haven't got much first team experience. A lot of them have been around the leagues and played a lot of games at lower levels, so they've got the ability to... They do, but traditionally Chelsea would have just cashed it. Chelsea would have taken the 20 million on offer from Villa or whoever for Tammy Abraham. They just went, look, so we got you in, invested a bit of money in you, didn't even have to pay your wage most of the time you were there, and we're taking the transfer fee and we're using that to buy a replacement for Eden Hazard. But now they've got to put them in the team, and it turns out some of them are really good. Yeah, well, that's the thing. They've been forced to do it because of transfer ban, and I think Lampard probably would have wanted to do it anyway, because he was looking to change the landscape there slightly, and the way things have been going. He didn't want to be that manager just sold young players. He wanted to give them a chance and bring them in. So he's been able to do that without being under too much scrutiny because of this transfer ban, but because of those players have played a lot of games. Like Abraham has scored goals at every level he's played at and done really well. It's just he hasn't had a chance to do it at Chelsea, and now he's in at Chelsea and he's doing it. So imagine if there'd been a transfer ban when Kevin De Bruyne or Mo Salah had been at Chelsea. And imagine those two players had made it the way they subsequently make it.
Chelsea had a lot of good players through their hands.
The problem is Jose Mourinho still would have been manager a couple
He
of
would have
months.
insisted on not picking him, even though, like...
How does Jose Mourinho do in the current Chelsea landscape?
No, he doesn't do well, does he, at all? Because I think if he... Well, let's face it, if he had a transfer ban, he'd have to pick from these players. He'd have a certain pool of players he'd have to pick from.
But he'd be telling them how rubbish they are at training every day.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, if only I could sign some players.
The thing is, though, like, when you say that, he was very encouraging to Rashford. I know he didn't play him at times, but he was a big fan and advocate of him. So I don't know how bad he is at bringing in young players. I think his ability to win trophies, that it's fixated upon, and that's been the drive in his career, and that's why he probably does what he does. But I don't think he ignores them that much. If he's forced to do it, I don't think he could.
Let's talk about Arsenal and Granit Xhaka. English football has this fetish for captain, for the role of captain, all the way back to, like, I don't know, probably Bobby Moore, right? Yeah. And for some reason, it seems to be the single most important thing in football. Most other countries, it's like you go up and take the toss, and that's it. We don't hear about these legendary captains from other countries who were like the most important player because they were the captain. We hear about the best players who were the best players as opposed to the players who ended up picking up the trophies. Is it true on a day-to-day basis when you're training that the captain is this somehow revered figure at the clubs you've been at?
No. Not revered. Like if you have a captain that's vocal and is kind of a voice for the players around the training ground, then that's a bit different because they can be the link between the players and the staff and the management. Because sometimes the management can be slightly separated from the players, and it can be that works because they don't want to be too close to them, and that the captain is the medium between those, and that can be very important. But Xhaka, I don't know. I'm like this. I think he's a good player, and when you play him playing for Switzerland, which we have done quite a lot over the last few years, he's very good and he does well for them. And the incident the weekend, he reacts to something that's happened to him. Fair enough. As footballers, we're kind of treated that we should be. It's built into you that you don't react to fans. You get on with it. You just kind of brush over, water ducks back, that sort of thing, and that's great. But if it's constantly happening, to have a person react because for the last how many months there's been many thousand people screaming him and giving out to him and booing him, is it that bad a thing that he's done?
I don't think so.
I think it, yeah.
In English football, if you're the captain, you're supposed to be this otherworldly, superhuman person because that's what... So captaincy is somebody you can build up so that you can shoot down and use as a scapegoat in the future. It's like insurance against something going wrong in the future. And that's why I think most of the English media are like, this is terrible. You can't... Because then they can do the same thing to the England captain.
If you look at Arsenal, remember Aboué? Aboué got booed off the pitch that time. So the difference was Aboué wasn't a captain, and then there was an absolute outcry for how bad the Arsenal fans were against him. It's similar. Aboué didn't react, and Aboué was a bit down, and he walked off and he almost had a tear in his eye, so there's a bit of a difference. Yeah. Xhaka's reacted to it because he's probably, I know, maybe a bit stronger mentally and just thought, I'm sick of this. Yeah. And there's less of an outcry for him because he's reacted to it.
It's true. I completely agree with elements of what you're saying. I'm not sure if I agree with the whole idea of captain being this completely pointless figurehead.
It's not pointless.
We've just been speaking about Jordan Henderson, who, with the captaincy, I'm not sure, maybe you would say that it didn't improve or disimprove his leadership skills or anything like that. I think if you're picking out a captain, you can point to somebody in the Liverpool dressing room and say,
come on, he's a great captain. Who is the real captain of that Liverpool team right now?
You're going to say Virgil van Dijk.
Exactly. And we all know it. We all know that he's their leader. He's the totem pole. It's him, or maybe it's Salah, or you could make a case for Bobby Firmino. And in future, you're going to be able to make a case for various other of those midfielders who nailed down a spot and who are the first name on the team sheet. But so Jordan Henderson is just like, it doesn't actually matter.
On-field general, Jordan Henderson.
He isn't. That's the whole point. So the captaincy is bollocks, basically.
I don't think it's complete bollocks. I can see your point and I can see where you're coming from in all of this. Like, what is the actual material impact of it? And I think in other sports, for example, it has a bigger role. I think in rugby, for example, it would have a
very
bigger
specific role. Your job is to speak to the referee.
So I accept that. But I still think it's not completely unimportant. And I do think Arsenal had a dearth of people to select from. I think now they're going to do what they have to do, which is just hand the captaincy to their best player, which is Aubameyang, and just get on with it. I do think the Arsenal fans, it is a little bit embarrassing the way they've behaved towards Granit Xhaka, just because he has performed at a subpar level, and their frustration comes as a result of him being made captain. But Unai Emery has a relationship with this guy that goes below the performance. He sees this guy as a fiery character, and like the Abue thing is a great example. Like it's that was a crushing experience for him, and hopefully it's not a similar thing for Xhaka on a human level.
Yeah, he never come back from it, did he?
No,
never know. And there's been a huge, big outcry and everything about mental health and all this sort of thing, which ties in with this, I think, slightly, because players are subject to so much abuse all the time, and you accept it and you take it and you get on with it because you're a footballer and you expect it to. But then you react once and you're torn apart for it.
Yeah. Look, I think the Arsenal fans should be on trial today for what they're doing. And what the hell do they want? What do you want, Owen? What do you Arsenal fans want?
I would have been sitting in my seat cheering on the team if I was at the Emirates Stadium last weekend. I wouldn't have been one of those.
Sorry, you're a Kerry football fan. We know exactly what you're like.
I don't know what is the thing that they want? What is the end goal of all of this? Is it to shove Granit Xhaka out? Is it to get Unai Emery on the pulpit this morning and say, I am so sorry for making this Swiss man my team captain? It makes no material impact on how Arsenal have performed this season. It's a very, very handy scapegoat. So I do think you have a point on that front.
What do you ultimately want, though? Do you want a new manager? Is Emery, is his time up? Or do you actually have to sit and work through another year of this and maybe another year of this before you come out the other side and you go, OK, now Emery has all the players he wants. He has the style of play that he wants.
Well, for me, with Emery, so he's come in and he's trying to change things, and it's great. And it's after Wenger, who's been at the club for so long. So it's a hard task. Like Manchester United, it's very hard to take over after a manager that's been there for a long time, has such an influence. But the thing for Arsenal that's been screaming out, and I think anybody could see, is that they need a decent centre-back. And to go in and you have all these good attacking options currently at your club, Lacazette, Aubameyang, good players going forward, and then you bring Pepe, great, he could turn out to be like Henry, I'm not too sure, but he's got pace, he's got an abundance. But to be spending that much money on attacking options when you should be breaking your bank, like Liverpool did, to bring in a centre-back that can absolutely be the linchpin of your team and be someone you can build your back four around. They brought in Tierney, who I think will be a very good player going forward, but he hasn't had a chance to perform yet or play because of injuries. But they've needed a centre-back for years, and that hasn't been addressed. So I'm like, well, why has that not been addressed? Why have you not gone and thought, this is the most vital part of our team, we need to change and we need to bring in, and they brought in David Luiz, who we spoke about at the start of the season. He was never going to be that person, and he was never going to be there for that long.
I wonder if you look at what Man United, who've bought multiple centre-backs over the last number of years and just never got the right one. Like, maybe they feel like they need to spend the Harry Maguire money to get somebody who's good, and they were unwilling to commit to I don't even know if they were in for Harry Maguire, but
no. Like the one that screams out is Koulibaly. From like, he seemed like, I know he's probably going to be breaking the bank money for most teams, and after Van Dijk was 75, this guy could be maybe more, even though he's not worth more than Van Dijk, but he could be slightly more price-wise because of the way the market's gone. But you would have thought, if you're a team that's looking, that's your main, maybe they haven't found the right person, but that's your main point to try and improve.
Yeah, and they obviously signed that kid from San Etienne, put him straight back on loan. Like, that's obviously not the answer.
Obviously not.
They've gone through a raft of youngsters in that department over the last decade, and a lot of them have failed. David Luiz was that plaster option at the end of the transfer window. Your 11 million quid signing at the time, I'm not going to lie, I thought it was a good signing. At this vantage point, I was wrong, and I'll accept that. But also, I don't think I think I'm wrong because of the fact that he ultimately was not the Arsenal signing. He was not the signing for a club that was flailing around at the back. This is a player who could take a class defence and possibly make it even better because of the qualities he has on the ball. But to actually take a defence that has their confidence on the floor and take them up to an appreciably better level, that's not something that perhaps David Luiz could bring. So I'm sorry to be wrong, because I love David Luiz, but perhaps he's not going to bring that. Like, I think the bone to pick from an Arsenal fan's perspective is that Granit Xhaka probably shouldn't be in the starting team. A lot of people just don't believe that they look at a midfield of, I don't know, Ceballos, Torreira, Guendouzi as better footballers and a better set of options in midfield, and Granit Xhaka just shouldn't be starting for Arsenal. And then to see this guy being made captain, that is what they're mad with. And then he gets hauled off, and it's like, this is all your fault. We finally have somebody to blame. Shame, Cersei being walked through the streets of King's Landing is Granit Xhaka getting hauled off at the Emirates Stadium against Crystal Palace. That is his moment of shame. That was a moment at the time of the people from King's Landing / the Emirates Stadium to throw whatever they wanted at the person.
But then as well, the thing is about being made captain, I think the fans feel that there's a level of you can't drop a captain. So that's probably why they feel that as soon as it was given to him, then regardless of how he's playing, he's not going to not play. So that probably incensed them even more, which is difficult. Like you said, if they feel that the other training midfield is a better option, then they should play. And if the manager feels they should play, but you shouldn't just play your captain because he's the captain.
Yeah, and the thing is that he took him off because he doesn't care about the captaincy.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter because he
that's a good
a
point.
superior football culture where he's not in for life. I just picked him. Just made him captain.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter. I do want to talk about Man United because the Man United fans in my timeline, in particular, Tommy Rooney is like, we're back. We're back. We played really well for the second game in a row. It's like we're alive again. Simply by virtue of the fact that Martial and Rashford are playing together, they become better players than when one is missing or when they're playing individually. So are they back? Is this a...
I think it's a far cry to say they're back. I don't think they're back, but they've definitely improved. And I think Solskjaer, for me, the last 2 games has shown a little bit better managerial skills than he has up until this point, in the sense that they went out against Liverpool and they had to play a completely different way than what they would have done against any other team. And then they went out against Norwich and he changed it. And instead of being the team that was set up to defend and protect and counter-attack, they were a team that were just attacking. And they could have gone there a little bit kind of edgy, knowing that they'd beaten Man City and they're capable of scoring goals, but they didn't. They went for the throat. They set out in a really attacking fashion. They, bring Martial being back and Rashford together, they will cause anybody problems because their pace and their skill. So, it was a good step forward that he's put them in a setup that allowed them to show that attacking flair. And there's 2 penalty saves. The game could have been 4-5, and I thought overall they played well. And for the goal that Rashford set up for Martial, where he's coming inside in the back, it was just a lovely bit of football and a great finish for Martial. So it was nice to see that from them. And again, it made me a bit more confident in Solskjaer, because the 2 games that they've had back to back have been very different games, and he set them up in ways to try and win them both.
Yeah, so he's not a chump, basically, the way he had been portrayed after the last few games before that. And it looks like they're going to have patience with him, because they've come out and said they'll have patience with him, and really they've no choice at this point. The worst thing you could do is get rid of him and get somebody in interim. So he's got at least until the end of the season, you would expect at this point. Barring a complete disaster, and there's enough signs that there's a bit of life about them.
Yeah, and they've made good signings. They've not made, like, Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, James has been a revelation, I suppose, and no one expected that to happen. They didn't expect to be thrust into the forefront of it as much as he has been. And then around them, they've got some very talented players as well. So it's just trying to get the best for them and pick the best team that suits the way he wants them to play. And that was always going to be hard, but I was impressed with them against Norwich, and I felt that was the last 2 games have been a stepping stone going forward for them.
What the hell do you do about the penalty situation?
I think it was right. Rashford missed, so he stepped away from it and gave it to Martial, whose penalty was better but was still saved. So if your penalty taker takes the first one and then afterwards he's probably not that confident, it's very different to the Pogba situation where he wasn't taken and he was down at the penalty taker. If he steps up, misses, and then for the next one thinks, I don't fancy this one, gives it to someone else, that's allowed. I don't think that's a thing. If they don't have someone in their team that's good at taking penalties, what can you do about that, really? That's not something. Maybe practice them more in the training round.
Yeah.
Especially with VAR, you're probably going to get a lot more penalties than what you would have done before.
Do you try and go back to the days when it was like Dennis Irwin style?
Yeah.
Like one of your full-backs or your centre-backs, Harry Maguire, come on.
Well, yeah.
You've got a big head in you. You can take this.
Just take it, yeah. It's a strange one, but you have to have a player that wants to take them. You have to have someone that's confident enough and feels like, I'm going to slot this away. And even if they do miss, they don't feel like they're can't score the next one. Like most players, like Rashford is a striker, even though he's missed the first one.
Should have taken the second one, right?
Yeah, he should have taken the second one. For me, he should have taken the second one. He should have felt, I'm confident enough. It doesn't matter that I've missed one, I'm going to bang this one in. This is my opportunity to redeem myself. That's more of a plight than, I think, him giving it to someone else. I think it would have been better for him to step up and take it again.
If I'm Aaron Wan-Bissaka's agent, I'm like, here, listen.
I know, there's a choice here.
They're going to get 10, 15 penalties a year. Step up, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm the next James Milner.
Yeah.
There's loads of money for you there. No?
No, definitely.
Like if you're anybody's agent.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah,
Just not playing at the minute and they're playing well. Is there a coincidence or is it just there's no correlation between these things?
I don't know. I think he definitely offers them something. On his day, he's a very good player. We all know that, and he can drive the team forward. But without him, they're probably a bit more unison. They seem to be a bit more cohesive as a unit. They don't seem to be as dependent for him to perform, because if he's on the pitch and he doesn't perform, the rest of the team feel like, oh, he's not performing, he's having one of these days. That's what it seems like. Whereas when he wasn't there, you don't have to worry about that. They can just get on with it and try and perform as a team together.
So he's out until December. This is a chance for them to understand exactly what they have without him, and then in the meantime to work out what he would do if he comes back. December is very close to January. Do you try and find a buyer in January?
I don't know. It's a very hard situation because they, by all accounts, they're trying to tie him down on a longer contract.
Wow.
So you don't. If that's what they're putting out, that's what they're actually trying to do. But the fact that he's been quite vocal in the sense that he's shown he wants to leave all the time. Do you want a player like, look at Tottenham with Eriksen at the moment? Eriksen showed he wanted to go in the summer. They should have sold him because at the moment he's a fraction of the player he was, and that's based on the fact that he didn't go. Is that going to be Pogba? Pogba wants to go and doesn't see his future being at Manchester United because he doesn't probably see he's going to get Champions League trophies or wherever it's going to be. Cut your losses and sell them, and then move on and bring in someone that you feel can be more of a team player and benefit you going forward.
Yeah, no, for sure. Stephen, good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much.
It's 19 minutes past 9. You're watching OTBAM. Up next, Tom Malone's going to join us in studio with the sports news. First, let's hear some more from Jordan Henderson, and first David Myler after Liverpool beat Spurs by 2-1, which was live on Off the Ball on Sunday.
The stats for Liverpool are pretty impressive. 10 games unbeaten, obviously, to start the season. 12th straight victory here at Anfield. 45 games unbeaten here at Anfield. If they are to go on and win this title, that game here in 2 weeks' time against Manchester City with all that home form, is that a game you think Liverpool should be really going to win? Or with that 6-point lead at the moment, do you think actually part of them will be thinking, you know what, if we can maintain that gap, that'll do us?
I don't think it's in their DNA at the moment. The way Jurgen Klopp has this team set out over the last, this season and last season, and obviously, the success of the Champions League, this team only knows how to, I think, go and win football matches. I don't think they can set their stall out. Even the games they had against Man City last year, they never looked like, either team was playing for a draw. City will be coming here thinking, if we can beat them, we shorten the gap. I know there's other games in between, but Liverpool, as you said, their home form is incredible, and Man City. Fernandinho obviously picked up a red card yesterday. I know it's only a one-game ban, he'll miss the League Cup, but, they've got problems at the back. And with Liverpool's front three, without an established, back four, you'd fancy Liverpool to beat them at home.
It's time for David Myler's player rating. 2 weeks ago, we were at St James's Park. Kieran Clark hadn't played a Premier League game since January and kept Manchester United scoreless. And he gave him 8 out of 10. He got his goal. What had he given him?
8.5. No.
What did he lose the 1.5 for?
He didn't score the winner, did he?
Harsh.
Well, it's harsh, but it's fair.
Do you think he's going to do all right as a pundit?
If you asked him, could he have done more in the game? If he could have done more in that game, he would have said yes.
Yeah, of course. I can do more and do better, of course. I'm very critical. So that's a generous score for us, I think. But will he do well as a pundit? I think he'll do very well. He's got the gift of the gab. Hopefully I'll see him a lot more on telly.
You're good with your time. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
8.5 out of 10. Yeah, not a bad score. Tom Malone, how are you?
How's it going?
Good solid 8.5 out of 10 every day from you.
Yeah. How are you?
Good. Where are we starting?
We're starting with the Ireland squad. Republic of Ireland manager Mick McCarthy. He's going to have some good news. A few players come back from injury. Set to recall Robbie Brady when he names his squad later for the crucial 2020 qualifier against Denmark at Lansdowne Road. Brady, of course, missed his last 4 internationals, but he is set to return after he returned to first team action with Burnley. He will be named in McCarthy's panel. Also good news potentially about goalkeeper Darren Randolph, who's recovering well from that thigh injury, and he's set to be fit, as is Shane Duffy. He's returned to training with Brighton today. Troy Parrott Potentially he's going to play in the New Zealand warm-up game beforehand on the Thursday. And of course a win over Denmark will book Ireland's tickets to the finals. The SSE Electricity League promotion relegation playoff is quite evenly poised. Drogheda United will bring a 1-0 cushion to Ballbofey to play Finn Harps on Friday night. That's after Chris Lyons scored a late winner in the opening leg at United Park last night. 5 games down for decision in the English League Cup later, including 2 All-Premier League affairs. Holders Manchester City welcome struggling Southampton to the Etihad, while Everton host Watford at Goodison Park. Southampton, of course, were hammered 9-0 by Leicester on Friday night in the Premier League. But City boss Pep Guardiola can see reasons for that loss.
Every time I arrived in the first minutes, goal, 10 players against 11 against Leicester. When you know the team Leicester are, so it was not easy, but it's different competitions, Carabao and Premier League, and try to face good games.
Yeah, we didn't really make enough of that whole 9-0 thing, did we?
Yeah. It was
brilliant, wasn't it?
It was the perfect cocktail of all the vital ingredients you need for a 9-0 hammering. So, first of all, you have a team in complete and utter disarray.
Yeah.
Second of all, you have shite conditions, because that will make the disarray even worse. Third of all, you need either a severe injury to kind of ruin the heads of the people, or a sending off. Yeah. Tick, 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 tick. Next of all, you need an outstanding attack on the opposition half, which they do. But then finally, and this is the most vital ingredient, you need that attack to be full of bastards. They absolutely hate anything good in life. Yeah. Just take your face and rub it in the mud. Jamie Vardy.
Jamie Vardy just absolutely loves it, like, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Who gets more hat tricks? I want a hat trick. No, I want a hat trick.
Full glory.
Yeah.
And really, the kind of bastard in chief seems to have been Johnny Evans. He goes up to Jamie Vardy mid-match and is like, "We're on a record here. We've got to get the 9.
Yeah.
United did it to Ipswich in the 90s. We've got to get the 9." So, it's remarkable. All these things just came together beautifully, and then Brendan Rodgers rubbing his hands on the sideline.
The Southampton players have donated their salaries last week to charity.
A day's wages.
A day's wages, just a day's wages. Fair enough. But the manager still has his job.
Rob Hasenhüttl.
Come on.
Yeah.
The Klopp of the Alps might be trotting down the mountain after that. He was broken after the game. God.
Yeah. What else can you do? You can't come out and go, you can't be bullish.
No.
What do you do at 5-0 down at half time? Is that just stop conceding goals, or
maybe that, I don't know. I mean, at that point you've got to try and, where's your effing pride, Kieran Fitzgerald style.
Yeah, the players have to take a huge amount of responsibility, obviously, as well.
Yeah, but you're losing 5-0 at half time. That's not playing the manager.
He said he took full responsibility, so I felt a bit sorry for Hasenhüttl, but at least they're donating a day's wages.
Can he keep his job? Is he?
It'd be an extraordinary comeback from here.
It'd be quite good. I mean, Phil's a big fan of Ralph Hasenhüttl, and I think even last Thursday he's like, okay, my loyalty here has been tested. This guy is up against it. Yeah,
it seems to have been kind of a one-season wonder.
None of the Irish players were playing, so.
Oh, that's okay then.
Well, Nathan Redmond was, of course.
Well,
Leeds green.
Yeah. Speaking of good players in the world of football, Granit Xhaka is set to be absent from Arsenal's game against Liverpool tomorrow after his angry reaction towards club's fans when he's booed after being subbed against Crystal Palace. Manager Unai Emery is reported to be ready to consult. I mean, is this right? Ready to consult with the Gunners players before making a decision of whether to strip him of the captaincy or not. Does that not just imply that
he's not in charge?
He's not in charge at all as well. You know, you surely just want the manager to either get behind him or strip him and make an example of him.
Well, where is the notion that there's going to be a revolt coming from? Because that has been in the papers today, that he fears a player revolt if he strips him of the captaincy. I mean, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Stop downing tools?
Yeah, down tools even more?
I wonder, is it Mesut Ozil or somebody connected to Mesut Ozil feeding those stories to the papers? Because it's one or the other. A head is going to roll. And it's either going to be Ozil's or it's going to be Emery's. I don't think they can both coexist in this.
I mean, who can coexist with Mesut Ozil, though? There's...
Well, I think, you've got yourself to a point as a club that still exists in Europe by kind of pandering to a lot of egos in the team anyway. Now, granted, Mesut Ozil has the most ginormous of all of them.
It would be.
And pandering to him is even a big ask. But I think they should just do it. I think they should just give Mesut Ozil what he wants in terms of how many minutes he wants to play, when he wants to play. Give him the captaincy for all I care. Give Mesut Ozil the captaincy and then sell him at the end of the season.
Absolutely peak Arsenal. Just, you know what? Who needs discipline? Discipline's completely overrated.
Does Ozil still play football?
Occasionally, from time to time.
What's the current issue?
Himself and Emery From what I can gather, there's no official reason. Just don't really like each other. There was a video doing the rounds last week of them kind of bickering at training.
So he's just not in squad, but he's fit.
Well, I think the official reasoning has been injury, hasn't it?
Right.
You know, I was way for. I haven't been keeping up the tabs on Mesut Ozil, but it's usually injury tended to strike Ozil at the very most inconvenient of times.
Yeah.
So I presume that's been happening again this season.
Moving on to the Rugby World Cup, and former Munster coach Rassie Erasmus is fully aware of the magnitude of what's on offer this Saturday. He leads the South African side into the Rugby World Cup against England in Japan, and of course crucially they've a fit again Cheslin Kolbe to select from on the wing. Erasmus is hopeful that his players can cope with the weight of expectation.
The pressure is on, we feel the pressure, we're excited, but we feel the pressure and we found our ways to handle it and try to work around it. And they would have the upper hand in terms of Eddie's experience of both being with South Africa and being with Australia. But, you know, we've tried to find our own ways how to handle that. And so far, so good. But certainly Saturday will be a big test for us to see if we can go that last step.
Yeah, and just on the refereeing front, Jerome Garcès of France will referee deciders, so the first Frenchman ever to referee. Is that good? He can let it. It can be a bit of a free-for-all with the breakdown with him around the place, so the offside line becomes a little bit...
It wouldn't be good for England. Is there Khaleesi? Is there 2019 not a great year for Khaleesi's?
Yeah, I'm sure it's been made. I've always thought that there's a joke there ready to be made, but I think you've just nailed it there.
I don't know if anybody's made it yet.
Get that on Twitter ASAP.
Because the big news coming through is that the Game of Thrones showrunners Benioff and Weiss are not going to be taking on Star Wars. They've stepped away. In a statement, they said they're regretfully stepping away from the trilogy, setting a full schedule. In August, they signed a 9-figure deal to make films and TV with Netflix. So that's separate from, obviously, the Star Wars. Is it because the...
Well, there's competing streaming services.
Exactly.
Aren't they? So.
Yeah, so you maybe can't do both of them. Is this because...
Was it a mutual agreement?
Game of Thrones is so bad?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you know. It's like...
the last series.
As I say, yeah, a mutual agreement to
Just
walk away from the...
episode, really.
The last episode was what?
Just the last episode, not the whole last series.
Was bad?
Yeah.
But the whole last series was bad.
Well, sorry, the second last. Whenever the White Walkers got killed so easily, you're like, that's it. All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
I always made that point on
Bit of a
Off
waste
the
of time.
Wall, our Game of Thrones podcast, which is still available to listen for anybody who's so inclined.
All right, we're done. We're done. Thanks very much, Tom. Amazing interview, says Simon Fallon, with David Harte on Off the Ball this morning. Even if you're not a hockey person, it's worth going back to listen to. Hope to have him on again in the Saturday panel in the near future. No doubt we will. You can listen back to the David Harte interview as well as the rest of OTBAM on our podcast after the show, which you can get on the Go Loud app, or you can get on offtheball.com/podcast. If you missed anything from this morning, Brian O'Driscoll, Alan Quinlan, Stephen Kelly, David Harte, or the sports pages, get back and get the podcast. Off the Ball is live tonight from 7 until 10. We'll see you tomorrow morning from 7:30. We're going to have reaction to tonight's football, build up to the Rugby World Cup final, and Cork Camogie star Amy O'Connor in studio. Have a great day. Good luck.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.